The sun was still close to the horizon, the first rays of the day warming them up as they walked along the road. Nadya's red hair danced in a gentle breeze as she and her half-brother Kalaa approached the distant shadows of a great city. Her eyes sparkled with a mix of excitement and caution. She loved cities, but they also bore a certain risk for them.
Kalaa, you better keep close this time.
Nadya teased him slightly.
Remember what happened the last time you strayed away.
While she giggled a bit, the warning was not without merit. The giant panther swiveled his head to look at her. His eyes were a pool of gold in the early morning light. And they narrowed. "I could have escaped," he rumbled, his voice low and gruff, yet somewhat understanding. The last village they visited was kind of a mess. Kalaa strayed away too far from his sister. His curiosity got the better of him, which led to his capture by the fearful townsfolk, who did not know that he was more than just a beast. It took Nadya a good while to find him again, her heart pounding in concern for his well-being. As she finally found him, he was bound with many ropes, surrounded by townsfolk and a few guards. She had to be careful. It was already a certain mood in the crowd. One spark and the situation could badly escalate. Luckily, Kalaa knew better than to resist any more than necessary. Nadya had to think fast, and she knew that she had to use her charm to persuade his capturers. But that was still dangerous with people blinded by fear. Though she had a slight advantage. Her fiery red hair and her fair skin was seldom seen in a land where the people had bronze and olive skin tones. She was an exception in this area, and she used it well. Nadya was also no one who shied away from using her looks to her advantage. She wore a small vest who barely covered her breasts, and her tight leather pants left little to the imagination. After looking around, she hid her spear in a nearby nook. She did not like it, but it would make it easier for what she had in mind. With her hips swaying a bit more than necessary, she approached the guards who kept Kalaa bound and the townspeople at bay.
"What a creature you captured!"
she purred, her voice like honey in the ears of the guards.
"You're so brave and strong."
Hoping it would work, she moved her arms so they would press her breasts a little bit more together, bringing them more into the view of the guard. "Don't you see we have no time for a whore like you?" The guard bellowed at her, but she already saw that she captured his eye.
"Oh, of course I see this, but you know, I love the danger. Say, can I take a closer look at that beast you so heroically caught?"
Silent prayers left her mind to any god who was willing to listen.
"I can make it worth your while."
Nadya hoped he would fall for her flirtations. She really did not want this to end badly. The guard still looked grim at her, but he nodded. "Make it quick, wench." Nadya smiled and nodded. Then she scurried to Kalaa. As she was close enough, she leaned on him, like she would pose for the others.
"I get you out of here, don't worry,"
she whispered, while she got a small knife from her armbands. It was no weapon, more of a tool, but it would be enough to mess with a rope. Many eyes were on her, making it harder to work, but as she snuggled on Kalaa's fur, she managed. "I can feel the ropes loosen. Watch out," he growled in words only she could understand. For the people around them, it sounded like the beast was agitated.
"Is it enough?"
Her hand ruffled his fur. "Yes." And with these words, he tensed his muscles and stood up, ready to pounce. Nadya let herself fall, making it look as if he pushed her away. She made sure her vest slipped while doing so. She hoped the view of her bare breast would buy Kalaa at least a few seconds more. The crowd gasped and the guards gripped their weapons tighter.
"He pushed me away!"
the young woman screamed, making herself look vulnerable and in need of protection. A few gazes really wandered to her exposed breasts. Kalaa used his chance, and with a mighty jump he leaped to the roof of a nearby hut. His chances to escape were better above the humans that threw spears at him, but he was gone already. His powerful muscles pushed him in giant jumps over the heads of the screaming crowd. One of the guards kneeled by Nadya. "Are you hurt?" He could barely keep his eyes on her face. Most women in these lands showed as much skin as she did rarely, so it worked rather well when she did it. Her exotic looks helped even more so.
"I think I'm fine, just hurt my back."
She smiled at the guard, one less to throw a spear after her half-brother. Nonetheless, she needed to get out quick. Somebody was sure to see that the ropes were tampered with.
I need to return to my master. Oh, I hope the beast will not find me,
she shivered, making her breast jiggle slightly. You better do this. The guard helped her up, his gaze still lingering on the soft pink color of her nipple. With faint shyness, she looked down and then corrected her vest, mostly to get her arms from his grasp. Then she moved to the hiding spot of her weapon and left the town in the opposite direction Kalaa ran. She made haste to leave, while her looks were her boon to her lure. It also made her stand out, and it would not take long before the first people noticed that the beast came to town with her. After she left the village, she swerved around it. Vegetation was scarce in this area, but she found a few shrubs big enough to hide her companion.
Kalaa, are you in there?
She asked, and the giant panther showed himself. They both looked back for any sign of pursuit, but the villagers seemed to have given up already. It was a shame. Nadya had hoped to spend the night in the village, sleep in a real bed, but fate had other plans.
You worried me, brother,
she chided him softly. Worried? For me? Laughter filled her ears. Sometimes she asked herself how other people, the normal humans, would perceive it. It sounded almost mockingly, but she heard his affection beneath the teasing tone. I could have escaped any time I wanted to. Those ropes were no match to my strength. Nadya rolled her eyes, though she still felt the adrenaline from the escape pulse through her veins.
Strength is not everything, Kalaa.
He felt her hand patting his side.
They had weapons with sharp edges and pointy ends. I even saw some bows. Luckily they did not use it as you escaped. Your muscles are strong and your hide is tough, but you're not impervious to weapons.
She leaned on him. Her concern was noticeable.
Besides, I had it all under control. There was no need for a scene.
His big head nudged her, almost tipping her over. Kalaa was as strong as he was big, easily twice the size of the biggest cat she ever seen. I know you did, but I don't like being the source of your problems. The two cuddled a bit. Nadya loved the feeling of his fur, warm and soft.
You're never a problem, Kalaa. I love you, you know that. And hey, that's what siblings do. They help each other out of everything they got into.
She sighed.
It's still a shame. I had hoped for a real bad.
Nadya shrugged her shoulders. She would survive it, and they got on with their journey. As they walked side by side, her hand brushed through his fur from time to time. They never talked much on their way. Most of the time it was simply not necessary. They understood each other with small gestures and looks. Nadya's thoughts were elsewhere anyway. They drifted to their father. She had never met him. All she knew about him was what Kalaa could tell her, and he did not have much good to say. Kalaa blamed their father for his mother's death. Back in the present day, the city walls grew higher as they got closer. It seemed to be a bustling place. The closer they got, the more people they met. Their eyes always on them. The redhead and her giant panther stood out. Yet very few people got close. Kalaa was a frightening presence. Big teeth, sharp claws, and his size alone kept him away. Many had heard of big cats, but surely never this big, and with fur as black as the darkest night.
Just stay calm and close, brother. We'll find a quiet place to rest and move on at dawn,
Nadya whispered to her brother. One of the first things she learned while traveling together was that people did not take kindly to someone who talks to animals like they are humans. Kalaa growled in response, his muscles tensed up. Nadya could easily travel the human world. She was one after all, at least in looks. For him, though, it was different. Despite his looks, he was no beast of destruction. It was only fear that painted him as a monster in the eyes of humans. He once again felt the hand of his sister on his back, softly circling in his fur.
Remember, we're just passing through. We won't stay long, she whispered.
He nodded, barely noticeable. The city walls grew taller with every step, casting long shadows over the dusty road. Nadya felt a thrill. She loved settlements. The noise, the smells, and the constant murmur of all the passers-by. The first smells of roasted meat got to her nose. She could hear merchants crying to be louder than their neighbors praising their wares. But first they had to enter the big city. Most villages had no palisades, just a road that leads between the huts. Anyone could enter and leave as they pleased. But with such big cities it was different. The walls protected them, but they also kept them shut in, made it harder to make a hasty retreat if things go sideways, and for both of them this was a regular occurrence. Her heart began to beat faster. She could not resist the allure of a city, even though she knew it was a constant danger for Kalaa. They both reached the city gates, a big door made of wood and metal, sturdy and heavy. It was big enough to let 2 carts pass by easily, and of course it was guarded. It would be difficult to enter the city for the 2 of them. The guards looked at them from the distance, eyeing them with suspicion. And then they finally reached the gates.
"Good day. May we enter the city?"
Nadya asked. She knew they could not simply go through the gate like other visitors. The older guard looked down at them. "Who are you?" he asked with a harsh tone.
"I'm Nadya, and this is my trusty comrade Kalaa,"
she said, bowing her head deeply. "And what do you want in the city?" His gaze still lingering at Kalaa. Nadya anticipated such a question, and she did go back to a lie that Hugh often used.
"I'm an artist, and he's my performance. We look for a few coins and a place to sleep."
She used her sweetest voice. "Why is he not caged?" the guard asked. Nadya noticed that he was more nervous than he let on.
"Caged? How would I ever transport him in a cage? You see, I'm alone, so I could not possibly move a cage. But I swear to you, sir, he's as gentle as a kitten as long as I'm near him."
She patted his back. He let her, relaxing a bit, so he looked not as dangerous. Kalaa's eyes searched hers, a silent understanding passing between the 2. He would endure playing the tamed beast.
"I can put a leash on him if you want,"
she said, her eyes fluttering a bit. It was a hollow promise, and the guards knew it. What should a leash be useful for? A beast that size would need at least 5 men to even stand a chance of holding him back. "Are you kidding me, wench? What should a leash hinder? If he wants to dare through the citizens, he would do so with you in tow," the guard bellowed. This was not good. The situation seemed to tip to the worse.
"Forgive me, sir, but you see, Kalaa here is not a mere beast. He is a performer, trained from the earliest youth to listen and obey to my every command. Maybe you like a demonstration?"
She tried to diffuse the mood. The guards looked at each other and then nodded. "Fine," the one grunted. "But if he so much as twitches in the wrong direction," he took his spear. Nadya laughed. It sounded like the tinkle of a bell.
"You have nothing to fear, I swear,"
she assured them and turned to Kalaa. Her green eyes met his golden ones, and she knew he was ready. At least, as ready as he could be to be humiliated.
"Kalaa, roll over,"
she commanded him with a clear and theatrical voice, and he did. His tail swished 1 time, 2 times, and he rolled on his back, exposing his belly to the astonished guards. Their eyes went wide. He really seemed to understand her every word. Nadya took advantage of the situation, stepping a bit closer to the guard next to her.
"You see, he is as obedient as a well-trained hound."
The guards murmured among themselves, clearly impressed, yet not convinced fully. Clear and distinct, the next command was heard, and Kalaa followed it. Nadya let him show quite a few tricks, luring in a small crowd, and each of them was more impressive than the last. She had Kalaa jump over her, make him dance on his hind legs, and even bow to the crowd. People gasped and cheered. Oohs and ahs were heard, the amazement palpable. The fear of the beast slowly made way for wonder. If only they knew it was just a game of deception both of them played. Sure, Kalaa followed her every order, but not because he was trained to do so, but because he knew of the necessity of all this theater. They played this game a few times. Soon Nadya will go to the last trick, the finale.
Now, Kalaa,
she said with great drama, her eyes gleaming with excitement.
Show the people how big your mouth is.
A shiver got through the crowd as Kalaa opened his mouth, showing his sharp fangs. Nadya got closer to him and bowed down. She shoved her whole head between the dangerous long teeth. Everyone knew that if that beast of an animal would close his jaws now, she would be beheaded. The men held their breath, and mothers clenched their children closer to them, many of them horrified. Yet Nadya was calm. She knew that her brother would not hurt her. Not now, not in the future. With a dramatic flourish, she pulled her head back, her hair a wild mane around her face. Applause started, the crowd euphoric that it all ended good, the tension broken by the sheer spectacle of the act. Once again, Nadya's vest had slipped a tiny bit, nearly hinting at the rosy tip of her breast. It was a calculated move, one that she honed over many performances. The guard's eyes flickered downward for a moment, the jaw slack from the performance. The young woman bowed down a bit, taking advantage of this, revealing just a little bit more of her breast to captivate without giving away the full price. She knew that the promise of more was often more potent than the reality. Many in the crowd hoped for more, either tricks the giant cat showed, or secrets Nadya was willing to share. But she had reached her goal. The guards, while still wary, exchanged the suspicion for intrigue. Nadya felt the tension dissipate like the mist in the morning sun. She stepped closer to the gates, her hand resting on Kalaa's back.
You see?
Her voice a playful purr.
My act is one of trust and beauty. We bring wonder and joy to those who dare gaze upon us.
With a slight challenge in her look, she told this to the guard.
Surely a great city like yours has a place for such a unique entertainment?
The guard's gazes lingered on her exposed skin for a little moment longer than they should. But that was only a sign for her that she had conquered the interest. After a long pause of pondering, the guard nodded. All right, you may enter the city, but I will not hear anything that makes me regret my decision. Or you'll find yourself in a dungeon, and I will make a carpet out of his pelt, he gruffly said. Watch your step, wench. And with that he returned to his post. The lingering onlookers understood the show was done. With their fear forgotten, a few of them threw coins in Nadya's and Kalaa's direction. Nobody dared getting too close to the two. While they were calmer, nobody would test if Kalaa was really that tame. Nadya happily gathered the coins from the dirt, smiling too and thanking the spenders. The sound of the coins a sweet melody of a successful deception, and also a nice addition to their funds. A soft bed seemed closer this night. Nadya felt no regret. She did get the crowd something for their money, though they both were not really performers. It was just a facade to slip through the cracks of a world that feared her brother as a monster. But even she had to admit it was easy to see why. He was a predator, and a big one at that. They all did not know that he had a conscience. The people parted as the two of them entered the city, and as they walked along the street. Both of them were accustomed to the gazes. Fear and awe were traveling companions since the first humans they met. Cobblestones replaced the dirt of the street, though it did not really get cleaner. They heard the whispers of the city, tales of grandeur, but also corruption and other crimes. As they walked deeper in the belly of the city, Kalaa grew more tense, his unease growing by the minute, and his tail swishing nervously from side to side. His eyes, normally sharp and filled with an inner fire, grew dull. Nadya could read the face of her brother better than even animal trainers could. She knew how much he hated it to be a trained pet. It was true that his form was that of a beast, but his mind was as sharp as that of any other human. or even more sharper than most, given how stupid humans could be. Being ogled like a dull animal was humiliating for him, even if he knew why they did it. She pulled him into a small alley and leaned down to him.
I'm sorry, Kalaa. I know how much you hate this, but we had to do it.
Her gaze spoke more than 1,000 words. Kalaa relaxed a bit, his muscles loosening its tension. I know, it's just infuriating, he growled. The young woman hugged his big head. Nadya knew all too well that he followed her in the settlements to protect her. Kalaa would have been content with roaming the wilds forever, but he also knew that his sister couldn't escape the allure of society. And honestly, they needed to talk to humans from time to time. They both knew little of the world outside their homes, roads and where they lead to. Without asking, they wouldn't now, and they could not afford to travel aimless. They had a destination they wanted to get to. The North, finding the home of Nadya's mother. Just so she saw it once, and maybe find a clue to their father.
How about I make it up to you? The onlookers gave us good coin, and there must be a marketplace. I'm sure we find some good meat for you,
Nadya smiled. You don't have to. It's not that I'm not understanding why we are doing it. But she was already on her merry way, and he made haste to get after her, not wanting to be bound again. It did not take long for them to find a market, and then a butcher. Nadya looked over the many sorts of flesh. With swift movement she got the coins from her bag and let them fall on the table.
I want a piece of the best meat you've got, for this much.
The butcher was a strong man, though slightly chubby, and counted the coins. You can get a few of these. He pointed to meat that looked slightly off. Her foreign look made him think that Nadya did not know the worth of the wares and the quality, but she knew. She used her wits to haggle with him, making sure that the bystanding customers know that he wanted to rip her off. With a bit of rage and a lot of shame, he gave her even better meat than she paid for, just so his customers would not leave. Nadya was happy with herself. Beautiful and juicy was the lump of meat she got, and without hesitation she fed it to Kalaa. Some of the customers gasped. This wonderful piece of meat fed to a feral beast. The two of them kept moving on, not caring for their murmurs. Nadya got herself also a good meal, but as she searched for a place to sleep, she found out that none of the many guest houses were ready to let Kalaa into their rooms or stables. As the sun set and the streets emptied slowly, they settled in a small alley. I could just climb up the roofs and sleep outside, and you could have a bed for the night. Nadya gave him a scolding nudge on his head.
And tomorrow you are in some cage or worse. I won't leave you just to have a soft bed, and you know that very well, Kalaa.
A bit of pride came over him. He remembered how they met, far away from here, in the jungles of another land. His domain was the ruins of what had to be a bustling city once, but even when he was born it was long claimed back by the jungle. One day he noticed Nadya in the jungle, a young girl clumsily tumbling over roots and through bushes. Of course he didn't know then that she was his sister, and he planned for her the same fate anyone who crossed his borders would face. Dead from his claws. Fate, though, had much different plans. He followed her through the shadows, invisible for her despite his size. For a moment he thought about mercy. He did not hesitate to kill, but normally the ones that came to his domain were grave robbers and treasure hunters, trying to plunder the ruins. People with weapons, a danger for him. But she was just a girl, her clothes in rags, but she did not seem to care. It looked like she searched for something, but what this was seemed to even elude her. After a while he had enough and pounced her. He never met a good human, and why should she be different, young or not? under his giant paw. She was trapped, and he looked at her. Slowly his head came closer and closer, and she could feel his hot breath in her face. "You will now die, human." Like always, he told the same words he told every human he was about to kill. What happened next was the strange thing. With wide open eyes she looked at him.
"You can speak?"
The words shook him. She had understood him. His head moved even closer, and then he noticed it. Faint, almost not there. But her smell. Something familiar was in it. Something he disliked in an instant, but still it piqued his interest. "Why do you smell like him?" A dangerous growl followed the words, as if her answer would decide her fate.
"Oh,"
was all she said. Kalaa had even seasoned warriors pissed themselves as he pinned them on the ground with his paws, but this girl was unfazed. "My father. You carry his scent. It's faint, but it's in there." Nadya did not seem to understand, but Kalaa did. Just like him, his father must have sired her mother, and then disappeared like a thief in the shadows. "You don't know it, human. The gods left us their legacy as they returned to the skies from where they reign over us. Their pets, creatures for their amusement, still roam this world, and our father was one of them. That much I know." It hit Nadya like a punch to the guts. That explained so much. Of course she had her red hair and her fair skin, but she knew that was her mother's legacy. But there was more. The warlord who had held her mother as a slave treated her with the utmost respect compared to all other females in his house. Servants whispered behind her back when they thought she could not hear them. "Daughter of the gods," they called her. She perceived it as some cruel joke she was not in, but it seemed there was more to it. Nadya remembered how the warlord always courted her. Surely he also thought of her something special. And with that revelation from this beast above her that called her sister, it made so much sense. He wanted to groom her into his bride to marry her when she reached a certain age, but not out of love. He wanted a gateway to the power of the gods. What better way was there than to marry a godly child? Or, no, the panther called their father a pet to the gods. It was not the same, but it set her apart from the other humans she knew. Her mother was a chosen one. A creature of myth had chosen her to be his bride and impregnated her. The result was Nadya. Could this be why the winds whispered to her to follow the way she had traveled to come here? Her mind swirled. All the kindness she had ever known to herself was not out of affection. It was a means to an end. She was a prize to be claimed, but that was not what she chose for herself. She had escaped this grim fate, and now she found something she did not even know she had. A brother. Sure, a beast in body, but he could talk and was clearly intelligent. Maybe together they could find answers. That was the reason they were now traveling the lands. As they sat down in the alley, getting ready for the night, Nadya leaned against his fur with her back and fetched the map from her bag.
"It seems that we have to cross a desert to reach another land, or we have to go around it. What do you mean, Kalaa?"
She still had problems reading the map. She understood the concept, but the world was so big and the map so small. On it, every distance looked like a small step, but it could take weeks to get from one point to another. "The desert is a dangerous place, Nadya. It might be better to go around it." He took a look at the map, too, He had not much love for humans, but he had to admit that those weak creatures were inventive. To stand up against the wilds and to compensate for their meager teeth and claws, they forged weapons out of metal, weapons that could even harm him. To make travels easier, they took animals under their yoke and made them pull their carts. They did not have to hunt for their food, they could grow it from the earth.
We could take precautions. We need water and food. I know you would not like it, but you could carry many things.
She spoke with caution. Kalaa was proud of his muscles, but he was disgusted to be seen as a normal animal. But he was not mad at her. It was only true what she said. He could easily carry a big amount of provisions. Do you think we have enough money for that? If we go around the desert, we can live off the land.
But it would take us weeks. The desert is much shorter.
She sighed. With the light fading more and more, she decided that they could discuss this tomorrow, after a good night's sleep had refreshed their mind.
We will decide tomorrow, Kalaa. Who knows what the next day might bring?
Nadya moved closer to her brother, snuggling herself in his fur.
Have a good night, Kalaa,
she said, suppressing a yawn. Good night, he answered before he rested his head on his paws. The night muted the sound of the city. Here and there a tavern still bustled, but for the most part silence reigned. Kalaa and Nadya slept deep. Nobody took notice of them, and here in the city the chance for surprises that would rip them out of their sleep was lower. Their travels had led them through many trials and tribulations. They fought beasts and bandits alike. Each fight brought them closer together and deepened the understanding they had for each other. Together they acted as one dangerous enemy, and they did not plan to change that. With the sun rising the next morning, they woke up. Both of them stretched. Kalaa let out a roar, but not even that brought them some more attention. Nadya looked around and pulled her pants down to relieve herself in the alley. She had no real shame to be seen naked, but some things she liked to do in private. Kalaa not included. In fact, he did the same she did. After they finished, she came back to him.
Do you remember any wells? I could need a refreshment,
she asked.
Or maybe you can smell some.
Kalaa nodded and led the way. A few minutes later they reached a well that was a bit rampaged but still worked. The water looked a bit stale, but nothing they couldn't handle. Nadya kneeled down and cupped a bit of water in her hands. It was surprisingly cold and rather clean despite the looks. She sipped a few more times before she looked around and found an old bucket. She filled it and gave it to Kalaa, who now could quench his thirst. Then Nadya started to wash herself with the water. She did not bother with her clothes. Not for modesty, but simply because she wanted to be quick. Of course her clothes got wet, but she did not care for that. The sun would dry them soon enough. Refreshed they walked along the road, the city coming more and more alive with people doing their daily businesses.
Where could we find the things we need? And what do we need in the first place? I mean, except water and food,
she said, carefully not to be heard by the many people as they passed by. Are you sure we should try our luck with the desert? Kalaa couldn't hide a bit of mockery in his voice, but he did not know any better than her.
Shut it. You don't know either.
She hit him with a small sway of her hip, which made her tumble more than him. They both laughed. Without any knowledge about it, they knew it was dangerous, so Nadya started to ask around. Mostly she earned love and jokes at her expense, but not much relatable information. Around noon they gave up and sat down at the edge of the marketplace.
Well, it looks like we will take the long way after all.
Nadya kicked a small stone. It's better for us. We will reach our destination one way or another. He growled.
I know, I'm just impatient.
She sighed and leaned back.
Maybe we should go on after I ate. We'll be a while without tasty food.
Nadya looked around the marketplace. Surely somewhere they sold fresh bread and grilled meat. Suddenly they heard another call amidst the usual market cries. "We need capable fighters for our caravan!" It was an older man who walked around the marketplace, looking for men that looked like they could hold a weapon. Nadya looked to Kalaa. A caravan through the desert. That could be the help they needed.
"Let's try it. Come, Kalaa."
With a few short steps she was with the man. Kalaa not far behind. At first the man stepped back, seeing the big black cat leaping in his direction. Then his eyes fell on Nadya.
We are interested. We need to cross the desert and you need warriors."
She stood proud in front of the man, her spear dangling on her back. His eyes measured her. While Nadya had a fit body and muscles, she could see in his look that he had no interest in her. "And I am interested in warriors, not girls. Begone, wench!" he sneered. But then he looked at Kalaa again. "Is that cat yours?" he asked. Nadya nodded, letting his remark go. The caravan could be their way through the desert, and she heard worse on the travels.
"Yes, Kalaa is. And he only follows my command. We could be a great asset to your caravan."
"That is to be seen." With a grim gaze he looked at Nadya again.
"Does that mean we are in?"
she asked. Kalaa behind her growled a bit. He did not like that man. "That is also to be seen. I have to ask my master, since you are not what I'm looking for. Wait here." He told them with a cutting voice and turned away. Nadya and Kalaa followed him with their eyes as he walked to a sedan, located at the edge of the marketplace. Behind a curtain they could barely make out a man. It seemed that the recruiter was talking to him. In a heated discussion, no less. As they waited, Nadya heard snatches of the conversation. Madness, crazy, suicide. She was unsure if they really meant them, but it still lingered in her mind. "You hear that, Nadya? I'm not sure those people are our way through the desert," Kalaa said, pressing his body against hers.
Nadya's hand came down to his back. "Every caravan is a risk, especially through the desert."
She was determined to cross the desert fast, and it seemed that was the best way.
"Also, since when are we cowards who turn away from danger?"
She smiled to her brother. "That's my greatest worry," he said, but she could hear that he also shared some of her excitement. Still there was worry in both of their minds, but they could not linger on those thoughts, as the recruiter waved to them and signaled them that they should come closer.
"It looks like we meet the master of the caravan,"
Nadya said as she walked on. Kalaa nodded shortly and followed. They reached the sedan, but still could not see the man inside through the curtain. But it looked like he could see them. "So, you are interested in joining my little venture? And you are good fighters?" The voice sounded a bit strange, but merchants often had a certain tone.
"I would not say we are the best, but my spear is no decoration, and tasted blood before. And Kalaa, he can slice through leather armor as if it was parchment. Skulls crack under his bite like a brittle clay jug." A little boldness would make better impression, Nadya thought. She still did not want to sound pretentious. It was a small path to wander. Inside his sedan, Amir looked over Nadya's body. The curtains made it easy to look outside, but kept the curious eyes away. With greedy eyes he let his gaze wander over her body. She was lean but athletic, her breasts not too big and firm. He especially liked her exotic look, the red hair and her green eyes. A rare sight here, because slaves from the north were rare. And he also gazed on Kalaa, his fur shining in the noon sun. Surely a beast like this would bring him good coins, deaf or alive. This could be a great opportunity for him to make some more money if he played his cards right.
I see. Amir nodded. At least that they could make out. Now it's clear you're not a seasoned warrior. You look rather young. I'm old enough to find and follow my way, and I swear we will not hold the caravan back. She could not see his gaze. If she could, she might have changed her mind. You know at least how to talk, woman. And that animal you have? He's obedient? I could not afford to lose my wares or my beasts of burden, he inquired further. Kalaa felt anger growing in him. Again he was reduced to a mere animal. Nadya's hand softly massaged him, a silent sign of solidarity. I'm sure you have provisions for the fighters? You don't even need to cook his food, she said. Again Amir nodded. Look, nobody should say I'm stingy, or do not give eager people a place to use their power. Now listen, I will take you two along, but you will work for water and food. If we reach our destination, I will pay you a piece of the wares. You have to prove yourself to me, and if you can't keep up, we leave you for the vultures of the desert. Do you agree to those conditions? His voice and tone was still not to her liking, but she was sure that Kalaa and herself could handle future problems as they arose. Just don't forget your part of the contract, she said. His giggle sliced through her thoughts. Oh, I will, my dear, I will. Now listen, we meet up at the north gate. We will soon leave, so you should make haste. Tell Burhan I sent you. Here, take this, so he believes you. A meaty hand held a parchment to her, the first real glimpse she had on the man behind the curtain. She took the parchment and smiled. I will go there right away. And she did, not unhappy to leave the conversation as soon as possible. After a good part of the way, she looked to Kalaa. Seems we have a way through the desert, and we did not even have to pay for it, she smiled, waving the parchment around. Please tell me you are aware that this is most likely more dangerous than walking the desert alone, her brother murmured. I'm no idiot, Kalaa, but that guy is not the only one there. Maybe we find a few friends. He hired men, that means we will meet a few mercenaries. Those are often people who can be reasoned with. She tried to calm the situation down. When you have coin for it. He wasn't convinced, though he knew what she meant. On their travels they often came across mercenaries, mostly gruff and rough men, but surprisingly friendly, if you got into the circle. They arrived at the meeting point. It seemed that Amir's caravan was the only one that would start in the near future. Nadya asked the first man she saw, and he pointed her to Burhan, who was busy yelling orders. Burhan looked a bit older, showing the first grey hairs in his beard, but as firm as he shouted his commands, he did not treat the workers as lower as himself. As she approached him, he gazed at her, puzzled. What do you want, girl? It was obvious he thought of her as a nuisance, but at least he had no disdain in his voice, a rare occurrence with the men in these lands. Nadya did not even hold herself up with word. She gave him the parchment and let him look into it, smiling at him. Amir must be crazy. You ought to be a guard? While he could see Kalaa, he did not waver. No, we are, she said, the we accentuated. Burhan looked at Kalaa. An animal trainer, I don't care as long as you stay out of my work. The guards stayed there. He pointed at the tent with a ragtag group of warriors. By the looks of it, mostly mercenaries. We will stay the night here and leave at dawn, so we arrive at night at the desert. We will then camp again before entering the desert, and now go, I have work. Nadya nodded. He was firm, yet he did not come across to her as harsh, just busy. Most likely Amir, she assumed it was the man in the sedan, had left him with the preparations. With a pat on his back, she walked to the other guards with Kalaa. While he still attracted gazes, the people here were too busy to react any more. than dead. As they approached the guard tent, one of them pointed to her and grinned. "Look at that! They even have entertainment for us!" The others joined in. A short loss of temper let Kalaa roar, and the guards got their hands on the weapons. Nadya acted quickly, positioning herself between the man and her brother. "We are no entertainment, we are reinforcement." She smiled, hoping to bring humor in the situation to defuse it. The other guards really seemed to relax. Another one just said, "See guys, she's the new muscle." Laughter ensued. That was a good sign, but suddenly they grew quiet. An older, seasoned man in better armor than then came. "What do you want here, girl? This is no playground," he said, his eyes like falcons on her. He did not even twitch to Kalaa. "We are here to guard the caravan," Nadya said as polite as she could, once again including her brother. It was easy to see that the man before her had seen many things. The scars on his face told stories of vicious fights and bravery. His beard was the color of ash, speaking for his age, yet he stood firm and looked more dangerous than any of the other guards. A girl and her pet. At least the pet has claws and fangs. He measured Kalaa with a look, not impressed with the immense size of the panther. The old soldier could not have known that Kalaa dwarfed him in age, but it was true that he had seen less of the world. Both of them, especially Kalaa, tensed up a bit. The next gaze lingered on Nadya's spear. It was a strange one, looked like it was made of stone instead of wood or metal. Its blades certainly looked sharp, almost glimmering in the sunlight. "Your weapon, what is it made of?" His voice commanding, yet not harsh. Nadya took her spear off her back and held it to him. She did not know either. It was a relic from long-lost times. She found it in the ruins Kalaa had once called home. "I don't know. I found it in some ruins," she said, not willing to tell the whole story. His hand ran along the shaft. It was a strange feeling. "You can take it and look closer if you want, as long as I get it back quick," Nadya told him, a peace offering. If he approved of her weapon, it might help her get his approval too. He nodded as he took the spear from the young woman's hand. It felt lighter than it should be, given it looked made of stone. The shaft ended in an ornamental piece before the blade followed. It was not meant to be thrown, though it could be. Never before had he seen such a strange material. Though it looked like stone, it was something else, something old. A green hue tinted the material, made it look even stranger. The spear did not look forged. It was as if a craftsman carved it out of a bigger stone. With a skillful swing he let the spear swirl in his hands. Kalaa tensed up, ready to pounce him if he tried to stab them. But it was unnecessary. With great experience he pierced the air, getting himself accustomed to the strange weapon. Then he returned it. "You got a fine weapon, girl," he admitted approvingly. "Make sure to use it well, and remember my name. It's Kadir. I'm the commander of the guards, and you will heed my every command." Nadya breathed a breath of relief. They had managed the first hurdle, even if it was just for her weapon. The other guards grudgingly nodded before they returned to their dice games. It would not be easy for her and Kalaa, but they were in. "I will, Kadir. We both will." Her hand patted Kalaa's back. With a last nod, Kadir left her, returning to his own tasks. Since she had nothing else to do, she looked around a bit. The caravan would not have carts. They would not manage the sand in the deserts. Only camels and horses. As far as she could tell, it was just Amir who was in on it. He must have been rich beyond measure. Some of the cargo was still not sealed, and she smelled the spices. There were also bolts of cloth, and even some small cages, containing colorful birds or small monkeys. And then she saw something she did not like. Slaves. Men and women of all ages, shackled and bound, sitting in a small circle. She couldn't really count them because of the way they sat, but the number must have been around 20. Nadya hated slavery. She thought it wrong to own other people, most likely because her mother was a slave. The whispers she heard in the house of the warlord spoke from her mother as unbreakable. Not one day had gone by she did not try to escape. Sadly, she never managed. Kalaa also tensed up. As a creature of the wild, he also did not like slavery. But right now, both of them could do nothing, not if they wanted to avoid trouble.
Not now, Kalaa. Maybe we can help them some other time,
she whispered through clenched teeth. She kept in mind to maybe help those poor people. She could not free every single slave they met, but here and there it was worth a try. As the day grew older, the bustling slowed down. Nadya asked Burhan if she could help with feeding the animals and slaves. He nodded. A hand more would end the task faster. Kalaa lay down in the shadow of a few palms. Nobody dared to get close to him. Nadya had fun giving the animals their food and water. It was the last day of opulence before the journey would ration their food and drink. She also helped feed the slaves. Now she could take a closer look. One of them catched her eyes in particular. It was a young woman, around her age, and while the other slaves sat kind of hunched, she sat straight. Beautiful long black hair flowed over her shoulders and framed her face. Her bronze skin was not blemished from hard work, and in another situation, she could look almost regal. Curiosity gripped Nadya, and she got closer to her, giving her a bowl.
You look different. What is your name?
Nadya asked, kneeling beside her.
I am Huria,
the young woman answered, her voice calm despite the color around her neck.
How did you end up here, Huria?
Nadya inquired further.
My old master sold me to Amir. He fell victim to a conspiracy, and his wife told him to get rid of me. I guess it was envy of me, since my master treated me softly. I'm skilled in poetry and dancing, but now...
Her voice broke a bit. Nadya clenched her teeth. By the looks of it, she thought of Huria as pleasure slave. But it was clear now that she was not that. Yet.
Amir told me he will sell me to a brothel. I'm afraid,
Huria told her. How much she hated this. Nadya was no one to shy away from a night and heated embrace, be it with a man or women. But she always chose her partner. She did not have anything against whores, as long as they themselves decided to sell their body. But this let her anger boil in her. Yet she knew that she had better not let it get the better of her. Instead, she smiled softly at Huria.
Don't give up. You are not sold yet. Eat and drink. This is the last evening. We have plenty.
Her red hair glowing in the setting sun, and a soft smile played around her lips. Don't fraternize with the merch, girl. She remembered his voice. It was the man behind the curtain, Amir. For the first time she saw him. He was a fat man with a slimy smile. His mustache bought in form with much pomade. It stood away from his face like needles. Gold rings were wrapped around each of his fingers, and his clothes looked expensive. Nadya nodded.
Just don't let anyone know how you feel,
echoed in her mind. She continued to feed the rest of the slaves, and they were grateful for her soft demeanor. After all was done, she returned to Kalaa and leaned against his side. We can still leave. He did not lift his head, but he sensed her unrest.
No, we don't. We will stay. Cross that god-forsaken desert, and then we free the slaves.
She spoke quietly. Who knows where their ears would suddenly grow? Kadir came to them. Had he heard her? Was it some sort of sense for trouble he had developed? But her fears were without reason. You should sleep closer to the rest of us. We have no place for loners, he told her. Nothing more, nothing less. And he was right. She should try to get closer into the circle. They surely were not all assholes. Maybe she could even find allies. Slavery was a simple part of this world. The strong ruled over the weak, but not everyone hated slaves, or saw lowlifes in them. The old master of Huria was one example. He treated her good till his wife was envious enough and convinced him to sell her to a man like Amir. Burhan also had his eyes closely on the slaves, treating them good, and looked after that they all got their rations equally.
Come, Kalaa, we should integrate. We are dependent on them. Might as well try to make friends.
She stood up and returned to the guard tent. It was too late to make good conversation, but the closeness was a first step. Before the first sun rays peeked over the horizon, the camp started to breathe. The tents were dismantled and packed up, and the drivers set up the animals. Kadir gave a few commands. As long as they weren't in the way, the guards could basically do what they want. He still made sure they were on the right positions. Since the slaves needed their feet to walk, they were unshackled, which made an escape more likely, so he surrounded them with guards. It took a while to get the caravan moving, but once it did, it made a good pace, and they reached the edge of the desert even before the sun set. They set up camp again. Nadya once again helped Burhan with the feeding. He taught her how to calm the animals in the cages after the travel agitated them. And once again, she took water and food to the slaves, treating them with kindness. Amir watched her sharply, his gaze lingering upon her body. "You should stop lingering around them, girl," he said as he passed by him.
"I just feed them. Surely you would not want them to die of starvation?"
She contained her disgust for him, and he nodded as she kept moving on. It would be a long journey, she feared. They did not even start to cross into the desert, and she disliked him very much. The guards also did not help to ease her tension, giving her degrading comments about being a woman. Especially here in these lands, women were seldom more than prizes to claim and parade around. A few who dared to defy the status quo had a hard life. But if they managed to push through, they were nothing less than queens. Nadya knew that she just had to prove herself capable, and the worlds would cease. Until then, she did not really care. As much as they joked about her, they treated her no different than any other new face. As they sat around the campfire, they told tales of their achievements. Tall tales, mostly. Nadya was sure of it. The stories were not really to brag, though many did. It was to soothe the itch in them for action. Fighters with resting weapons grew bored real quick. Nadya knew better than to engage in the stories, though she had plenty. But it was not the right time. Until they had seen her in battle, they would wave it aside as myths and legends. One other soldier did not engage in the storytelling. Kadir. He stood a bit aside, watching into the desert with a stern gaze. Nadya had great respect for him. The way he moved and spoke reminded her a bit of her old mentor, though less mysterious as the blind man that one day showed up in the jungle ruins of Kalaa's home, but with the same fearless and calm demeanor. Maybe she could learn one or two tricks from him, if he would open up to her. He did treat her with respect, but still as someone who had no business with the other mercenaries in the caravan. While almost all had tents, even if only simple ones, Amir had an ornate tent, making sure everyone knew he was above them. He would sit in a soft chair in front of it and watch over his possessions. But he would watch Nadya even more. Normally she did not mind if people looked at her. She took advantage of this plenty, and she did not feel ashamed for her body or even her longings. But his gaze sent a shiver down her spine. His lust for her was barely contained, and she could feel how his eyes undressed her. Instead of letting her breast peek out of the west, she made sure this time they would stay neatly tucked in. Tomorrow they would enter the desert. Kadir made sure everyone knew what would await them. Scorching heat at day and shivering cold at night. First would be their shadow, yet they could not afford to waste water. It was rationed and guarded very well. The night was silent, and everyone tried to get as much rest as possible. At dawn they all packed up again. Kadir came to Nadya and threw her some clothes in the same way the others wore. "Here, take this. It will shield you better from the sun than what you wear." Nadya nodded.
"Thanks, Kadir."
Normally she would have preferred to run around naked. Clothes were a necessity to her, but this time she was thankful to hide more of her skin. Soon after they entered the desert, she was even more thankful. The sun was merciless and would have burned her skin badly. The heat took a toll on everyone. Kalaa was hit the most, but he pushed through with the grace one would imagine such a beast has. Every step was strenuous, and the siren's call of a sip of water was a constant background noise. Around noon, Amir called for a rest. The heat would be unbearable if they pushed on. Sunscreens were raised, with well-versed grips, and everyone did his best to get shadow. Nadya once again helped out with the care of the animals and the slaves. She took pity on them, and she hoped she could help them escape. But now was not the right time. The red-haired woman talked to Huria again.
"Tell me more about your old life. How was it?"
She had taken a liking to Huria. Despite the situation, the woman held her head up high. It wasn't that she was not scared. One could easily see that she was. Yet she decided not to let it break her.
"It was a good life. I was the daughter of a servant, and not a slave. The master treated me good. He sent me to get lectured in writing and reading, so I could teach his children. But, alas, his wife grew envy of me, seeing an affair where there was none. She treated me with disgust, culminating in an accusation that I took her jewels."
Huria shook. Her voice trembled.
I did not do it, but she had it easy to hide in my room, and so I was convicted and sold into slavery."
Nadya laid her hand on Huria's shoulder. Burhan came closer, nudging her with his foot, and nodded hidden to Amir's tent. "He will forbid you to come here if you keep this up," he whispered, and Nadya understood. Amir's eyes were on her, anyway, so she would draw much more attention to the slaves.
"Thank you, Burhan,"
she said while standing up. On her way back to Kalaa, she had to pass Amir's tent. Everyone had to hold themselves back. Food and water was rationed to an extreme. Yet he sat on a plush pillow on a chair before a table who was filled with food. Meats, fruits, even wine. His greasy fingers filled his mouth with the delicious treats. His gaze once again wandered over her, and she was once again happy to wear the dress Kadir gave her. "What do you always talk to the merch? I don't like this," he said, while still eating and with a cold in his voice that made her pay attention.
"Give them a little bit of compassion, keeping their morals up."
She hoped she had good arguments, at least good enough. For a moment she feared that this could be the moment where everything goes sideways. Way too early in the travel. She was unsure if she would find out of the desert on her own, even with Kalaa's help. But then Amir's eyes softened just a bit, lingering on the bulge of her breasts that were barely visible in the traditional desert dress. "You are a pretty thing," his voice almost a purr. "But remember your place. You are here to work and not make friends with my property." The coldness came back, even more icy this time. Nadya was in a dangerous situation. At the moment her exotic allure to him held her above problems. But in the desert, where the mood had only one way, down, this could change fast.
"Do you wish me to stay away from them?"
she asked, her breath controlled.
"Not yet."
She could see his eyes flicker to Huria, and her heart sank. She hoped that she did not make the slave woman's life any harder. But then she noticed the lust in his gaze, his fantasies involving both of them. For the moment she would bear it. Her time would come, she was sure of it.
"If you excuse me now."
She bowed down, just as much as absolute necessary. A short nod followed from him. Then he continued to fill his fat belly. If she did not have to keep it down, Nadya would have screamed. She sat down beside Kalaa, huffing her anger out, but so that no one could see. I can easily slash his belly open and you could hang him on his own guts, Kalaa mused. He had it easy. He could say what he wanted. Nobody would hear more than growls, roars, and purrs. Don't, brother. Your claws are way too good to get them dirty with the likes of him. It lightened her mood a bit. Maybe the world was against them, but as long as they had each other, they would prevail. That woman, you seem to like her. He kept the conversation going. I pity her mostly. Nobody deserves a collar around the neck. But she is a little bit more on my mind, she answered. Do you find her attractive? Kalaa knew that his sister did not care if men or women shared her bed. He had a certain curiosity for it, given that for him all humans were as attractive as a rock or a tree. Maybe. She is beautiful. Nadya looked a bit to Huria, interested but not with the same look Amir would have. He looked at women he wanted as if they were already his, and not as a human but as an object, a thing you could buy and sell to your liking. His gaze not admiring but possessive. Nadya felt a bit worse. Kalaa's proposal sounded better by the minute. She tried to close her eyes for a bit. They had a sunscreen for themselves, mostly because it was meant for Kalaa only, the soft thumping of his tail lulling her into a light sleep. The cries that they soon move on brought her back from her sleep. As fast as the sunscreens were set up, the man dismantled them. The caravan moved on, each step a bit closer to the destination. Everyone was silent, keeping their strength for the way. Nadya looked around. She noted that Amir had a compass. At least they would not get lost. Slowly the hours crawled by, and the mood sunk. All tensed up, yet Kadir kept his calm. Amir did not count. He had a servant fanning him with a giant fan made of ostrich feathers. Finally the sun started to sink beyond the horizon, and the caravan took preparations for the night. The slaves got shackles around their feet, so they couldn't flee as easily, and the guards got divided into shifts. Nadya helped the slaves to the ground, especially Huria. Both women shared an understanding look. She noticed that Amir looked at him again, his hand rubbing his belly, and his grin widened. Her stomach turned, but she kept herself under control. Instead she returned to the campfire the mercenaries huddled around. After she suffered with them through the first day of the desert, and still stood proud, she at least had earned a little bit of their respect. Why are you coming with us, girl? One of them asked. Nadya had no reason to be quiet about her goal, so she talked openly. We are on the way to the north. I hope to find the lands my mother came from. She was from far away, huh? I guess, looking at you, another one said. I heard from the northern lands, full of something they call ice and snow, the next one added. Nadya was intrigued. You know something about them? She asked. He shook his head. Not much. Hell, the farther north I was in the land of Helvas. Please keep talking, she urged him. It seemed he was ready to entertain her for a while. The mercenary talked about the huge mountains and the people who lived there. It was a rather pleasuring evening before everyone retreated to sleep, the guards on shift excluded. Morning came once again and the camp was filled with bellowed orders and the sound of tents being broken down. Nadya helped how she could, given her lack of experience. The slaves were freed from the shackles. That at least made her heart lighter, though she still planned on freedom. Just not yet. Her resolve for this was hardened by her hatred of Amir. She had seen slimy merchant, plenty, but Amir was the bottom of the barrel. 2 days later, she would learn just how much of a scumbag he was. You are the son of a mangy bitch! It was an unheard explosion of anger from Kadir that sounded over the normal noises of the camp being broken down. Watch your tongue, mercenary! Amir shouted back. You will do as I say or you will never ever get work. Do you understand?
Nadya just wanted to ask around, but a younger guard already came to the others. Amir plans to change the route. He wants to follow the Devil's Trail. He panted out of breath. Gasps were heard from some, while others shrugged their shoulders. What is the Devil's Trail? She asked. One of the more seasoned mercenaries answered her. Devil's Trail is a shortcut, but as the name should tell you, it's not the safest way. He shrugged, seemingly uncaring which way they would go. Just as Nadya wanted to talk, she saw Kadir return, his eyes still glazed with anger. That slimy son of a crook toad! He wants us all to follow the Devil's Trail! His voice sounded calmer again, but only barely. Kadir knew it was not the man's fault. We don't have to, right? It's not what we're paid for, one of the mercenaries asked. The old mercenary clenched his fist. Yes, it's not what we're getting paid for, but the son of a festering rat had our rations calculated wrong. We would not survive if we go the normal way. Now worry was to be seen on everyone's face, but they had to go. They had to follow the Devil's Trail. Seeing his angry mood, Nadya kept her mouth shut for the moment. The whole caravan worked to get back on track. Shortly before the noon rest, Nadya searched for Kadir and got to him, Kalaa in tow, his tail twitching around nervously. Kadir? She asked. Not now, girl. Get back to your post. She noted that he still had a grudge and kept it barely together. Nadya nodded with a sigh. 1 or 2 hours later, the caravan stopped for the noon rest. The sunscreens were erected, and everyone searched shelter from the burning sun. Small groups built, but each had the same talking point: the dangers of the Devil Trail. She sat down with the rest of the guards. Devil's Track, that means sandstorms. Lots of them. Don't worry, we will reach our goal even faster. Means more money cause we can be on work quicker. The discussion revolved around that for a few minutes. Then she noticed Kadir. He scanned the horizon. The young woman tried her luck with him again. You search for something, Kadir? She said. The old man looked to her, then back at the horizon. Just keeping watch, he said a few moments later. For sandstorms? Are they that dangerous? She asked. Without turning to her, he nodded. Imagine getting your face scratched off by 1,000 insect bites. That's what it feels like. Then you can't see anything, and the sound is deafening. You will hear monsters roar where there are none. But we can best them or not? I mean, it is not the end encountering one, right? She felt a shiver creeping up her spine. The problem is the speed with which they come, girl. One moment you can see the horizon, the next you are blind. And you have not much time to prepare, and we will have all that cargo and slaves. The way he named the slaves extra showed her that he did not see them as mere things. It warmed her heart a bit. In a certain way, she liked the old soldier. Sure, he was just as hardened as any veteran, but he also knew that hardness alone did not win battles. He did not simply command his men, he really led them. Not thinking too high of himself to not get things done by himself. Kadir helped erect and dismantle the tents and the sunscreens. He knew when to keep the leash on his men short, and when to look the other way when discipline was not of importance. You seem calm nonetheless, she said. I have seen many sunstorms, girl. You have to learn to read the desert. It's a living and breathing beast, and you can learn its rhythm. The whole time he did not look at her. And how do we read it? She asked in earnest. Look for the signs: a sudden drop in temperature, a stillness that seems unnatural, the color of the sky. It's different from one time to another, but if you pay attention, the desert will whisper its secret to you. Finally he turned to her and pointed to the animals in Kalaa. Watch them also. Animals know more about the world as we humans do. One would think a person like you knew that.
She knew that he could not grasp the depth of their bond, but that he had to remind her of the animal's keen instinct still stung her. "You're right, it's just I'm in thoughts lately," she said. "I'm old, not blind, girl. I see how Amir watches you. That fat swine is disgusting, yet still, he bought my loyalty, so don't do anything stupid. I would hate it to fight against you." It was not a threat. A man like Kadir stood high above such things. It was a warning. He might not like Amir, but he honored the word he had given him. And with the look he gave her, it was clear that he not only meant that she should do not something stupid with Amir, but also with the slaves. Yet he let it be at that. Suddenly, her ears heard something strange. "Don't forget them," the youngest guard said, fearful. The others burst out in roaring laughter. "Of course them! The legendary hoax! The Jinn are a myth, Kasim. You believe everything, huh?" They made a challenge out of who could laugh the loudest, it seems, and everyone made fun of Kasim, except Kadir. She knew he was a rather stoic man, but he was not without humor. Yet he still scanned the horizon in the direction they would go on. His gaze lingered, more concerned as a moment before, she thought. Nadya's heart pounded in her chest, as much as the others laughed. Something in the way Kadir reacted chilled her to the bone. Was he really only watching for sunstorms? Or was he watching for those Jinn? And how dangerous could they be? "Kadir?" she whispered almost. His breast heaved with a deep breath. "The desert holds many secrets, girl," he said, his voice a tone darker than before. "Some of them walk on 2 legs, others on 4, and some are best left unspoken." Her pulse quickened. She understood that this was no mere story to scare little children. Kadir's concern was earnest, and she was sure that he only kept to himself not to spook the other guards. She thought about asking more, but he already said some things that are best left unspoken. Still, she would take his warning to heart, and her eyes flew to Kalaa. If there was any truth to the threat of the Jinn, he would notice them first. So she must warn him what to look out for. Nadya returned to her brother, who was lying in the shadow of his sunscreen. "Kalaa, have you ever heard of Jinn?" she asked him. He looked up. "No, should I?" "It seems like it. Most of the men seem to think it's a myth, but Kadir looks worried," she said. "Keep your eyes open and watch out for everything." Their existence alone was more than enough proof that there were things beyond human understanding. Nadya wished she knew more about those Jinn, but right now it was futile of her to ask. Kasim would not answer her when the others could hear it, and Kadir was not willing to talk, else he would have done so already. The rest was filled with an uneasiness. Nadya hated it. But it came to an end anyway. With a word from Burhan, the people of the caravan began to move again. Maybe they would never encounter the Jinn. Maybe they really were a myth. But then again, Kadir did not look like it. Had he seen them on one of his many travels, perhaps? It was futile to think about it now. The march demanded her attention. Walking through the sand was treacherous, especially if one was not accustomed to it. Yet she could not help letting her mind linger on the unknown threat of the Jinn. A question popped into her mind. Could it be that Amir knew of that? Was she hired not only because of Kalaa? She made herself no illusions that they hired her as a warrior. Or was it because they needed bodies? Did he possibly calculate the losses, not only of his merch, but of his men too? More than ever she was grateful not to face the perils of her journey alone. Kalaa's company was soothing. His gentle purrs a comforting rumble that reminded her of the bond they shared. It was unbreakable, and it helped them through many dangers. The fear of the unknown slowly changed into excitement. Another challenge too best for her and her brother. They walked on, step by step through the burning sands of the desert. As far as the eye could reach, there was sand, so Nadya had no idea if they already reached the dreaded Devil's Track. Her eyes glanced to Amir, who looked at his compass nearly constantly. That did nothing to calm her nervousness. Kalaa walked beside her, his tail swinging softly from left to right. The muscles beneath his skin moved with grace, but Nadya knew he was suffering from the heat. She looked around to see Amir once again gazing at her. The commentary from the other soldiers she could endure. They got less anyway, with the man slowly getting used to her. Nadya never complained and did what she was told to. Never did she ask for special treatment. What her body could manage, she did. But Amir's gazes got under her skin more than she let on. She was still unsure if she would have another one help her if Amir would make a move on her. Of course she knew that Kalaa would just rip him to shreds if he would come close to his sister. But that would bring a whole new world of other problems. With a sigh, she let her hand rest once again on his back, watching his tail swing for a while. Suddenly, his tail stopped. His ears perked up, and he grew uneasy. "Do you feel it, Nadya?" he asked. Nadya looked to him, her face puzzled. "What?" she asked. "The air. It changed," he said, his nose twitching as if he tried to sniff out what exactly had changed. Nadya noticed nothing, but it was not the first time that his instinct was sharper than hers. She looked around but could not see anything. But then it dawned on her. It must be a sandstorm. She sped up her walk and looked for Kadir. "Kadir!" She stormed to his side and he looked at her. "What is it?" he asked calmly. "It's Kalaa. He's troubled," she said, looking around. Kadir took a long look at Kalaa, and then he looked at the camels. His eyes widened. "Sandstorm!" he cried out. Everyone looked to them. They didn't see anything, but Kadir made haste and bellowed orders. "Bring the camels together! Let them lie down and use them as a windshield!" The drivers were unsure what to do. They did not see anything. Amir looked down from his horse at the front of the caravan and rode to Kadir. "What do you scream, you old fool? We have to make haste to get on with our route." Kadir's eyes shot to Amir, narrowed in anger. "A sandstorm is coming, and if you want your belongings safe, we must prepare." Amir laughed so hard that his belly shook. "What are you talking? The sky is—" His laughter died. On the horizon the sky changed color to a strange red that had nothing to do with the sun. It was the sunstorm, and it would arrive fast. Amir screamed for his servants. Kadir let him be and looked at his men, and the drivers were safe. "It comes from the north! Bring the camels here!" He pointed to a dune that was big and wide, but also was a few meters left of them. "And make haste!" Panic ensued, but Kadir kept calm. Nadya returned to the slaves closer to the end of the caravan and made sure that they got also help. The wind around the caravan grew stronger, and one could feel the tension in the air. With each passing second, the sandstorm came closer and closer, a terrifying force of nature. Nadya looked around and saw that the camels were brought in position. They were native to the deserts, and it was their best bet to have shelter. She also saw Amir, watching all the hustle and bustle, and she could swear there were numbers in his eyes telling his potential losses. The sight of his indifference to the well-being of all the others made her blood boil. But now was not the time for a confrontation. Now she had to do her best to follow Kadir's instructions, so they could all come out safe. "That's right! Place them against the wind and bring them down!" With more and more force, the wind began to pull on them, as they all tried to get the best possible place. The roar of it got louder and louder, and one could see less and less. Nadya had to concentrate to hear Kadir's orders. She tried to keep to him, as he was the most experienced. "Keep your heads down and cover your ears and mouth!" He had trouble to be heard over the sound of the storm. Nadya noticed that Huria was missing, and she looked around. She could barely see her further down the dune.
Kalaa, come! We must save her! She shouted and started to run. Kalaa followed her. He could not hide with the other animals anyway. He made them nervous enough walking beside them. One of the guards wanted to hold Nadya back, but it was too late. He could not get to her. "You fool! Let her be and watch out for yourself!" Kadir looked at her, gritting his teeth, but he noticed what she planned. Yet he had to make sure that the other ones were safe. He could not care for strays. Nadya and Kalaa reached Huria. She was scared and cried as the wind blew harder and harder. "Come up! We have to reach the others!" Nadya screamed to be heard, even though the woman was right beside her. She tried to get her up and bring her to the rest of the caravan. "It's too late. We have to try it here." Kalaa growled. He laid down in front of them, his head turned away from the wind. Nadya clenched her teeth, but Kalaa was right. She had hoped to get closer to the others, so that Kalaa would have at least some protection. Now he was their protection. The young woman pressed the slaves against the panther's side. "Stay down and try to keep your mouth and eyes closed." She took her small knife and sliced a piece of fabric from her garb. She bound it around Huria's mouth. The storm was over them, and she had trouble to be steady. She curled herself up against Kalaa and prayed to whoever God would listen. She couldn't see much. A few steps around of Kalaa, it was like a dark wall of nothing. With great effort, she got the long cloth from her head and tried to shield her mouth and Kalaa's. It was like Kadir described it. 1,000 insect bites tried to grind your skin down. Nadya felt so sorry for Kalaa, who used his own body to shield them from the storm. Sure, his fur and hide was robust, but it must still be hard for him. She felt the storm dragging on her relentless. Huria clawed herself onto her and Kalaa's fur. She cried and shivered. Every second seemed to drag on for hours, and her mind started to play tricks on her. She could not see the rest of the caravan, but she thought she saw shadows moving in the sandstorm. Kadir's words echoed in her mind. "You will hear monsters roar where there are none." And she hoped he was right. It was hard for her to breathe sometimes, but she still tried. Her worries were with Kalaa the most time. He had no hands to try and protect his muzzle. That was her task. The sand was everywhere, and she felt like it would bury them. Sometimes she opened her eyes in the hopes to see an end to this torment, but there was none. Instead, she again and again thought she saw silhouettes in the storm. But that could not be. No one could walk in that storm, and no one in their right mind would even try. Then she shivered. Could it be that those were the jinn Kasim talked about? But suddenly, as fast as it came, the storm ended. The air cleaned up and she could see again. Kalaa was buried half under the sand, and she started digging. "Kalaa! Kalaa!" Her screams echoed through the desert. Huria looked around. With her bound hands she tried to help as good as she could. Kadir came to them, his eyes worried, but his demeanor still calm. "What did you think, girl? Are you crazy?" Nadya's eyes were glazed with tears in worry for Kalaa. Never before had Kadir seen a human care so deeply for an animal. But then he started to help digging. Moments later, Kalaa started to shake and stand up. "That was too close for my liking." He shook himself, and the sand rained down from his fur. Most of it. Nadya threw her arms around him and looked relieved. "I thought you died." "Yeah, me too. We can't leave that goddamn desert fast enough," he growled. Kadir and Huria had taken a step back as the panther rised, and now they looked at the scene in front of them. Of course, they could not understand his words, but the bond between this creature and the young woman was palpable. "Come now, you three. We have to look if we lost someone," Kadir said. They all returned and could hear Amir already. "Make haste, you stupid vermin! We have to return the last time!" His head red with anger. He was clean, Nadya noticed. All the others were covered by a fine layer of sand. Not Amir, though. As she looked around, she found the reason. A few of his servants looked badly bruised, worse than the rest of the caravan. They shielded him and took the brunt of the storm. How she wished to pierce him with her spear. But for now, she supported Huria, who was still shaken. She had hurt her foot, which was the reason she could not reach the others before the storm.
"Thank you, Nadya. You saved my life," she whispered. "Thank Kalaa. He saved both of us,"
Nadya answered. 2 camels and 3 horses were missing, but at least no people. The worst was that with those animals a good chunk of water was gone. Amir would not feel the sting, but Nadya knew he would save water with the slaves.
"Can you walk again, Huria? I have to help the others,"
Nadya asked. The slave woman nodded and got back with the other slaves.
"Rest a bit, Kalaa.
I go working." She patted his back and steered to the others. The guards and other members of the caravan all helped together. The cargo had to be secured again. Burhan tried to calm down the caged animals. Nadya helped wherever she could. A few of the people mocked her for saving a slave, but she could see others look at her with newfound respect. "Don't listen to them. You saved a life. It was stupid though what you did," the guard laughed, doing his best to ignore the raging merchant who thought they all worked way too slow. The sandstorm was a hard hit for the caravan. It would mess with the travel plan. It wasn't so much that they cared for a day or another, but the water would be a problem. A caravan, especially one from such a stingy bastard like Amir, calculated sparse. The travel itself became a race with death. Nadya once again looked to Amir, his hand close to his water skin. Surely he thought about how much he would share, and laughed at her own sarcasm. Before this man would share his water, he would let the others die of thirst. After they were back in formation, at least mostly, they returned to their journey. Amir proved himself all the asshole Nadya thought him, screaming that they all had to walk faster. He was not wrong, but the way he acted gave her a bad taste in the mouth. The mood was bad enough without him pushing down on it more. The next days were painful. Amir drove them all to their limits, servants, guards, animals, and slaves alike. Scouts were sent out to see if they were close by the next oasis, but they came back empty-handed. Mirage started to show themselves, making the travel even more dreadful, mocking the thirst of everyone. The animals grew weaker, their steps faltering. The slaves let their heads hang even lower. They stumbled more often. Even the guards had grown wary. The laughter and the jokes replaced with grumbling and complaints. While they had enough to eat, the water rations shrank more and more. Except, of course, those of Amir. He did not even try to hide it, which did not get him any more favor. Kadir tried to keep the morals up, but even he looked worse for wear. "This is why it's called the Devil's Track," one of the guards said. "We will all die here, just because that son of a bitch wanted to make a higher profit." The others nodded. The mood was at a tipping point. "Watch your tongues, man. I will honor my contract, and everyone who does not will have to answer to me." Kadir watched over them with his hawk-like eyes, his voice rough from the dryness in his throat, but still commanding respect. The other man did not dare to talk against his commander. He just nodded and kept his head down. Nadya thought about their goal. They wanted to reach the lands in the north, where her mother was born. She could not afford to die here. Yet even she noticed the vultures above them.
"Was it a mistake, Kalaa? Should we have taken the other route?"
Her throat hurt as she talked, but she had to distract herself somehow. "If it is our fate, then we will face it with courage, like every other problem." Even he sounded more tired than ever before, yet he did not waver. His resolve transferred to her. They would survive. The first was no enemy they could fight with weapons, but they could still face him with pride. Her head tilted up a bit again, and then she saw the scouts on the horizon. They waved with their hands, shouting over the distance, but they were still too far away to be heard. Still, it sparked hope in the hearts of all of them. Amir's greasy smile grew wider.
Once again he seemed to count his money as he watched over them all. This was the first time Nadya noticed that he looked at Huria with the same look he gave her. As the scouts had finally reached the caravan, they told them that the oasis was close by. The caravan could reach it by nightfall, maybe shortly after. With water in reach, the motivation soared. Everyone mobilized every last reserves. It was shortly after sunset that they reached the sanctuary of the oasis. Nadya stumbled to the edge of the pool and scooped the cool liquid with both hands in her mouth. Kalaa bowed down beside her and lapped greedily. Everyone drank to their heart's content before they built up the camp. After Nadya had quenched her thirst, she made sure that the slaves also got their fill. Amir watched her again, especially as she helped Huria. His lust was not really hidden as he watched the two women. It was sure he saw them both as his property, and Nadya dawned why she was hired. Well, they would be surprised when they tried to enslave her, but for the moment she let it be. Instead, she sat down by the water and let her hand playfully draw through it. She thought of taking a bath in it. She loved to feel the freedom of floating. Her mind drifted back to the house she grew up. It had many wells and pools of water, a sign of power from the warlord who once also thought he owned her. She remembered the servants running after her when she sprinted through the mansion, naked as the day she was born, to jump in the waters. Kalaa lay behind her, his tail swiping around lazily. The calling of the water whispered louder in her ear, and she really wanted to indulge in it. But she did not want Amir to get a glance at her naked body. All the others she would not care, but Amir should not see her. His mind undressed her anyway, but the fantasy could never beat the real thing, and so only her hand kept playing with the water. Since the mood was a bit better now, the slaves were not as strongly guarded and could walk around a bit. Most still huddled together, but few searched for a place to gaze at the stars, a small taste of freedom. No one would be mad enough to test his luck with the desert, not after they almost died of thirst. The night was beautiful, if a bit cold, but the moon was big and round, and so even outside the campfires one could see enough. Huria came to her and sat beside her. She looked a bit shy.
"Thank you again for rescuing me,"
she almost whispered. Her hands were still bound, so she watched Nadya's a bit as they still played lazily in the water. Nadya looked up.
"Don't mention it. I do such things."
"I don't even think about it." Nadya smiled. Her red hair glimmered softly in the moonlight.
"But your pet almost died protecting us,"
she said. Kalaa's ears twitched and he looked up.
"Don't call him Pet. He does not like it. His name is Kalaa, and he's very important to me,"
Nadya said, a smile tugging on her lips as she reached for his head to scratch him behind his ear. Huria had twitched back as he moved, but after that she looked at him.
"Can I pet him?"
she asked coyly. Nadya nodded and pulled her closer.
"Sure, just don't make any sun movements."
The red-headed woman winked at her. With a tentative touch, Huria let her hand glide through the fur. Kalaa let out a soft sound, though it still sounded a bit menacing, especially if one would not know the sound.
"Thank you, Kalaa,"
the bronze-skinned woman said softly. Nadya smiled a bit, because she knew that Kalaa understood her.
"How did you two meet, and how did you tame him?"
Huria questioned further.
"Oh, well, I found him when he was little. I don't know what happened to his family. I took him with me, and we have been together ever since."
The lie flowed easily from her lips. She used it more than once before. How could she have explained the truth? Suddenly, Nadya noticed that Amir was looking at them, his grin wide and his eyes full of lust. He rubbed his belly again as he sat in his chair in front of his tent, and then he stood up.
"You should return to the others, Huria,"
Nadya warned her, and the black-haired woman scurried away. Amir looked after her as she passed him, but he walked on. His eyes settled on Nadya. Her exotic allure called to him like a siren's call. As he stood before her, he grinned. His breath smelled of wine. His eyes roved over her in a way that made Nadya's skin crawl, a leer stretching across his face that was all too familiar. Kalaa growled more, and it seemed he was ready to pounce. Nadya held him back with a simple touch of her hand on his head. They could not need trouble right now. "You know, why don't you take a proper bath? Get rid of all the dust that collected in your clothes." His smile was greasy and his intentions as clear as the oasis water. "I'll bathe in the morning," she said, pronounced neutral, her eyes never leaving his. She could feel Kalaa's temper rise. "But it's so much more private at night," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper that sent a shiver down her spine. "And I'm sure you'd enjoy it much more without an audience. Maybe you want to invite your little girlfriend too?" It seemed the wine had loosened his tongue a bit too much. Nadya understood too well. He saw her as nothing more than a slave.
"Thank you for your concern, but I prefer to wait for daylight."
Amir's eyes narrowed. His smile turned into a snarl. "You will do as I say!" he hissed. "You are nothing but a whore's daughter, a plaything for the likes of me!" His voice was filled with anger. The first eyes wandered to them, but right now no one dared to enter the fray. Kalaa lunged up, his teeth bared, but Nadya was quicker, and she stood between the two. She was sure that Kalaa had his guts between his jaws if she had not held him back. Looking to Amir, she snarled. "Back off!" Her voice sounded fiercer than she wanted. She had to keep calm, control the situation. It was a dangerous dance. She needed to be careful, keep her emotions in check. But she could hardly ignore the burning instinct to protect herself, to stand up against the men that bought and sold lives like they were mere commodities. She felt the gazes they attract. A smidge of fear and fascination. "You dare defy me?" Amir spat, his hand reaching for the whip at his side. Nadia's hand shot to her spear. She would not let him do as he pleased, not with her. "I dare," she said, keeping her voice as calm as she could, despite her hand itching to take her weapon and make a spit roast out of the pig before her. But this would most likely be her end. "But I do not wish to fight." She saw Amir's eyes flickering to Kalaa, who had not taken his eyes off him yet. The giant panther was an embodiment of menace, his teeth gleaming in the light of the nearby fires. His sister knew he was itching for a fight, eager to defend his kin, but she could not let that happen. The crowd of onlookers grew. Nadya searched it for any ally, anyone who would stand by her side, but most of them just wanted to see where the show would lead. Except one, Kadir. He noticed the escalating tension and moved quickly to defuse it. He stepped beside Amir, his hand resting on the fat merchant's hand. Kadir leaned in and whispered something into Amir's ear. Nadya could not understand what was spoken, but she saw the color drain from the Karen master's face. His eyes went wide for a moment, before narrowing into a glare that could cut through rock. The old soldier looked calm and composed, but she could see the steel in his gaze, the unspoken threat that even shook Amir and made him understand. Amir took a step back, his hand falling from the whip. "As you wish," he said, his voice tight with anger and a hint of fear. He shot a glance full of hatred and malice in Nadya's direction, but said nothing as he turned and walked away. The rest of the people got back to whatever they did before, now that the show was over. Some of them with a glint of respect in their eyes. Kadir stepped closer to the two of them, his eyes never leaving them. "You need to be careful, girl," he warned, his voice a blend of gruffness and concern. "Amir is not a man to be trifled with." Nadya nodded, her heart still racing, and she slowly took her hand off her weapon. Kalaa also seemed more relaxed.
"I know,"
she said, her voice shaking slightly.
"But I won't let him touch me."
The old guard's gaze softened. He even brought himself to give her a rare smile. "Rest now," Kadir said, his tone a mix of kindness and command. "We have a long journey ahead of us. We need you both at full strength." Nadya nodded, the adrenaline slowly draining from her body. She knew that Kadir would stand by her, that his protection was more than mere words. In this world where strong ruled with an iron fist over the weak, she had found an unexpected ally in the grizzled desert warrior. "I made sure that he will not come close to you anymore, but you best give him no reason either." Just as Kadir turned to return to the fire, he froze. His eyes scanned the camp. Something in the shadows catched his gaze. Nadia's hand returned to her spear out of pure instinct, and her eyes followed Kadir's line of sight.
"What is it, Kadir?"
she whispered, the hairs on the back of her neck standing on end. Kalaa also seemed to notice something. His ears swiveled and his nose was twitching. "We are one man short," Kadir murmured, his voice filled with a new tension. "One of the guards is missing." Nadia's eyes widened in alarm as she scanned the area where the missing guard should be standing. The space was eerily empty, a stark reminder of the dangers of the desert.
"Could he have gone to relieve himself?"
she suggested, hoping for a mundane explanation, but she knew already it was just to calm her down. Kadir shook his head. "Not without leaving his post, and not without telling someone." His eyes were sharp as he scanned the camp again, looking for any clue of the man's whereabouts. The air around them felt charged. The energy of the desert shifted in a way that made Nadya nervous. Kalaa stood up. His nose was still twitching, trying to get a scent of whatever lurked in the shadows. "Nadya, something's not right," he growled. And though Kadir could not understand him, his hand moved to the scimitar at his side. "We need to find him, and quickly," he said firmly. But before he could make his first step, something erupted from the sands before them. A creature that might have been a human once, but now the skin was a leathery brown, stretched over bones that jutted out in unnatural angles. Its eyes were sunken sockets with an eerie glow that pierced the darkness. Clawed hands reached for them, and Nadya recoiled at the sight. Her stomach was churning. Kalaa reacted quickly and pushed Kadir out of harm's way. The claws of the strange creature missed him by a hair's width. "Jinn!" Kadir yelled as he gained his stance. His voice was filled with terror. The camp exploded into chaos as more of the creatures appeared, popping up from the desert floor like macabre puppets. As they finally understood their grave situation, the guards stumbled to their feet, drawing their weapons. But fear and confusion clouded their movements. The jinn that had shown up before Kadir and Nadya lunged at the old man. His claws sliced through the air with an awful sound. Nadya reacted on instinct. Her spear pierced through the air with a deadly accuracy, and it hit the creature in the middle of the chest. A tormenting shriek left the jinn's mouth and echoed through the desert. The creature fell down and the sand swallowed it. In the last second, Nadya could retrieve her weapon. More of the jinn emerged from the sands, their forms a twisted parody of humanity, their bodies almost human, but with so many things that seemed wrong. The camp was caught in a frenzy. The animals panicked, the fires from the camp sending shadows dancing across the nightmarish scene. Nadia's heart hammered against her breast. Her mind raced as she tried to understand what was happening. Kadir's cry of warning had alerted the camp, but it also seemed to have spurred the jinn into action. They moved with a predatory grace that belied their twisted forms, their eyes fixating on the living flesh they craved. Nadya saw the fear and horror in the faces of the men and women she had traveled with. The same fear that had gripped her a moment ago, but as the battle raged on, her heart filled with determination. Together with Kadir and Kalaa, she stormed into the heart of the battle, felling one jinn after the other. Kalaa jumped between the monsters, His normally gentle nature changed to a primal rage. His fangs and claws pierced and slashed through the enemy. Nadya and he fought together as one, making sure their backs are saved. Kadir used his experience to collect the bloody harvest in the enemies. Yet their numbers seemed not to diminish. They weaved through the panicked animals and the scared people, searching for the next victim to flay. Nadya's arms grew tired. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she fought. She could feel the fear trying to overwhelm her again, but she refused to give in. The jinn were unnatural, their movements hard to predict, but Nadya had survived in the wilds for years, and her instincts were schooled by it. Also, whatever her father was, his powers flowed through her and her brother alike. Like furies, they made their way through the rows of jinn. "We have to stay close to each other! Get us somewhere!" she heard Kadir shout. The time seemed to have slowed down. The battle was a blur of blood and sand. Cries of pain and death pierced through the night. Nadya's world narrowed around the tip of her spear, the sound of her breathing and the thud of her heart. Only on the edges of her perception she noticed some of the people were pulled away to the darkness of the desert night, their screams drowned out by the combat around her. She had no time to mourn the losses, not amidst the heat of the battle, as much as her heart ached. She had to survive, to win. Only then she could plan her next steps. Bodies fell left and right of her, enemy and ally alike. Kalaa and her tried to help the unarmed, but it was a losing battle. She had lost sight of Kadir and could only hope that he was still alive. And the slaves, what about them? The thought roared through her mind, but as she looked around she couldn't see any of them. They must have been dragged away, or maybe they were all dead. Sweat ran over her body. The unusual clothes around her hindered her movement. The heat in her face was unbearable, yet she couldn't falter. Wave after wave of jinn seemed to attack, and even Kalaa grew tired of the fight. He, the one with the bestial stamina. Then suddenly, just like the sandstorm, the jinn ended their attack. Ear-piercing shouts accompanied their retreat. Those who dragged no one just dived in the sand and disappeared. Nadya looked around, trying to catch her breath. Her and Kalaa seemed to be the only ones left, except for a few pack animals. Was it because of their heritage? "They are gone. I can't sense anything wrong anymore," Kalaa moaned as he let himself fall into the sand. "Are you hurt, Kalaa?" She kneeled beside him and looked worried. "Not any more than usual," he said, with a hint of humor to ease her worries. "It seems we are the only ones left. Do you think this is because of our father?" "That would be the first good thing I know of him. Well, maybe the second." He nudged Nadya. "We should leave after a short rest. Who knows if they come back," he added. Nadya nodded and stood up. The fires were still flickering, painting the scene in a strange orange light. She stepped over the battlefield. Blood and body parts were strewn over the sand. Kazim's body lied before her, ripped in halves, his face a mask of terror. Only Burhan's head looked at her in the silence of the night that had returned after the battle. Nadya mourned the losses. She may not have been long with them, but they had traveled together. One body she saw, though, gave her a grim sense of justice. Only his clothes make him recognizable. His body was torn to shreds, and his lecherous grin has left his face, or what was left of it. Nadya gathered her saliva and spit on his body, a silent curse for his cruelty and lust. "I hope you had no quick death, you swine," she said, and then she heard a moan, silent and weak. She looked around and found Kadir lying under a palm tree, close to the water's edge. With swift steps she closed the distance to him. The old warrior was gravely wounded, his armor shredded and his clothes painted red. His chest heaved with the last shallow breaths. His expression was oddly calm. As she kneeled beside him, the pressure of the loss came crushing down on her, and her eyes watered. A brief smile came to his lips as he turned his head, slowly, to look at her. "Water," he croaked, his voice rasped. Nadya nodded and reached for the water skin nearby. Someone, maybe Kadir himself, must have lost it, but it was unscathed, and so she gave him to drink. Greedily he gulped down the precious liquid. A semblance of life returned to his face. Yet there was no hope left for him. Nadya knew it, and so did Kadir. His wounds were too serious. "What is that sad look on your face? You're a warrior, aren't you?" he said. Even now he tried to watch over her in his own strict way. A brief smile formed on her lips, despite the gravity of the situation.
Kadir, you are badly hurt.
She wanted to say more, but he cut her off. "We all are, girl. But you need to listen to me." He coughed, his body wincing from the sudden jolt of pain. "You and your panther, you must leave here. They will come back, and I cannot protect you any longer." She nodded, taking another gaze of the carnage that was once a camp filled with life. They had just reached the oasis after days of torment, and now it was their grave.
"Which direction should we head, Kadir?"
Her voice was heavy as she tried to compose herself for him. A gurgling sound filled the air as he coughed up blood. Find the compass in Amir's chest. There is a map." His voice was barely more than a whisper, his breathing more and more shallow. Again the young woman nodded.
"Thank you, Kadir."
She looked at him, and one question burned in her mind.
"Kadir, why are you so nice to me? You even stood up to Amir."
His eyes searched hers for a moment, his smile getting a tad softer. "I have a daughter. You remind me of her." His voice faded as he talked to Nadya, but she still listened. "A wild spirit, with a heart as fiery as your hair, and a mind as sharp as a scimitar. Had a mouth on her too, just like you." Nadya took his hand, rough and strong, but his grip was waning.
"Thank you, Kadir, for everything,"
she said as he closed his eyes. "Go." It was his last word on his last breath, and then the life left his body. With a final squeeze, she let go of his hand. A cold emptiness gripped her heart, and she asked herself if this is what it feels to have a father. Sure, they spent not much time together, but he had always treated her good. Kalaa came up to her and pressed his head against hers. He was indifferent to the others, but not to her, and he felt her troubles. "We need to move, Nadya." Her feet pushed her up from the ground. Her expression was empty as she looked one last time at Kadir. He was not only their guide, he was a friend to her.
"There must be a compass and a map. Let's find it."
Her determination returned. This was not the time to mourn. Survival was the highest goal in this harsh world. The animals around her slowly calmed down. The once opulent caravan was a sad shadow of its former glory. But she still had a few things she could gather, and with her alone she could ride a camel and make the way faster. Her only concern was that Kalaa had to run, but he was strong and he would make it. What was important now was the compass and the map. She headed to the remnants of Amir's tent and searched through his stuff. It didn't take long, and she found the small wooden box, intricate ornaments carved into it. A small lock kept it close, but it was nothing her knife couldn't handle. A few moments later the box sprung open, and she found what she was searching for. The compass was a fine piece of work, his needle pointing steady to the north. The map was finely drawn on a piece of cloth and looked old, but it would lead her through the desert. Remnants of the campfires lit the scene as she gathered a few camels and provisions. She also took a handful of the gold coins she found in Amir's belongings, enough to live a good life for a while. Just as she was ready to leave the torn remnants of the camp, she saw the tracks where the others were dragged along. Why did the Jinn take them instead of killing them on the spot? Why did they need prisoners?
Kalaa, will you come with me?
She asked.
You are planning something stupid again, yes?
He came to her side, also looking at the tracks.
Do you have a plan?
Nadya nodded.
Yes, we will rescue all that are still alive.
Her voice was filled with all the emotions of the night.
If they are still alive.
Kalaa looked around the campground.
That's it, Kalaa. They have to be. They did not kill all. They took a good amount with them. We have to find them. I will go, if I have to, even alone,
she said, her fists clenched around the reins of a camel.
Don't be stupid. I will never let you go alone in the lion's den,
he told her, almost offended that she even thought of going alone.
But let's not run in there blind. Take a few of the weapons with you, and torches. Your eyes are not as good as mine.
Nadya nodded and started to search for a few different things. No longer did she only take provisions. She took weapons and whatever else she found useful. After she had collected enough, she mounted the camel and held the reins of the others, as they set on their way to rescue whoever survived the slaughter. As they set out, the first rays of sunshine started to color the sky as they followed the dragging marks. Sometimes they faded, but Kalaa could still smell the remnants of the jinn and their prey. And after hours of silent hunting, they were almost ready to give up.
Maybe you're right, Kalaa. We should have gone back.
Her voice was heavy with sadness. But just as they decided to turn around, she saw something in the distance. She couldn't make it out, but it was definitely there. A new wave of purpose flooded her.
There's something in the distance.
She pointed to it. Kalaa followed her finger and saw it too.
Well, then we will investigate this. But if we find nothing, we return and leave this god-forsaken place.
His voice was stern, and Nadya nodded as she spurred the camel on. As they continued the way, they could see ruins rise from the desert. A suitable hideout for the jinn. The closer they got, the more they could see. Once this must have been a great city, but the elements and time have whittled it down. Only the pyramid at the center seemed mostly unharmed, yet it was buried half in the sand. With caution, they sneaked through the empty streets.
We will leave the camels here,
Nadya whispered as she found a good place that was at least a bit hidden.
Then we will look into the pyramid.
Both used the shadows of the ruins as good as they could. They did not see any enemies, but it was better to be safe than to be sorry.
Do you sense anything, Kalaa?
Nadya asked as quietly as she could while looking around. Her brother shook his head, a human gesture that looked strange on the big cat. In one of the ruins they made a strange discovery.
What is that?
Nadya said as she walked to the strange fabric she saw in one of the corners. She slowly approached it and lifted it up.
It looks like parchment,
Kalaa said as he sniffed at it.
It's old and dry, and the faint scent does tell me nothing.
Nadya started to lay out the strange object. It was not smooth. The surface was riddled with a net-like structure.
It's long and kinda looks like...
A shriek stopped her thoughts. That was not one of the jinn. That was a human scream. She jumped to the entrance, or what was left of it, and spied outwards. From the pyramid's archway emerged a figure, followed by one of the jinn. Long black hair flowed after her as she tried in panic to escape from the threat that followed.
That's Huria,
Nadya said. Kalaa's muscle tensed as he started running, trying to save the fleeing woman. But he would not reach her in time, and he did not have to. Even faster than he ran, Nadya's spear flew through the air and hit the jinn straight in the chest. A painful shriek filled the ruins as he toppled and fell over himself. Kalaa reached Huria, who screamed in fear as she saw him, but then she realized that the giant panther is not after her. Like the others, the jinn sank into the sand of the desert, and Kalaa clenched his sister's spear between his teeth to pull it out before it vanished with the cadaver. Nadya finally arrived,
and Huria fell into her arms. She was not bound, so the djinn must have freed her, and she used that freedom well.
Calm down, Huria, it's us, Kalaa and Nadya.
She tried to calm the agitated woman. Cold fear was in the eyes of the slave.
They have the others. A few are still alive.
Her voice shivered as did her body. Gently, Nadya brought her to the ground.
Where are they? In the pyramid?
Concern filled Nadya's voice. If there were other survivors, she had to help them. With her friends around, Huria calmed down slowly. Kalaa let the spear drop at his sister's side. It seems it was only this one. So there must be others around. You should better watch your weapon.
Thank you, Kalaa. Now, Huria, can you tell me about the pyramid? What awaits us in there?
Nadya took her spear again, holding it tight in her hand, as Huria's shivers slowly calmed down.
There are rooms. I don't know how much. They all pushed us. My hands. The rope broke, and I just ran. It's okay, Huria. It's okay.
With a gentle rub over her arm, Nadya tried to calm her down further.
The camels are back there.
She pointed to the ruins where they left the camels.
Go there and wait for us, while we free the others.
A new look of terror rushed over Huria's face as she clawed herself to Nadya and shook her head.
No, please, don't leave me alone.
Helpless, Nadya looked to her brother, who had also no idea what to do.
You can follow us, but you should have a weapon. Come, we get you one.
All three of them returned to the camels. It was eerily quiet despite the fallen djinn. As they arrived, they gave her a scimitar. She never had used a weapon in her life, only kitchen knives, but it was still better than nothing.
Stay behind us,
Nadya commanded her, and they returned to the pyramid's entrance. A short while after they entered, Nadya noticed that it was much brighter than she had anticipated. By no means as bright as the day outside, but still lighter than she thought.
Why is it so bright in here? I thought we had to find our way in the darkness.
Huria pointed her to oil lamps, standing in well-hidden nooks. It was an advantage and a disadvantage at the same time. They tried to be as quiet as possible. Ironically, an easy feat for the biggest of them. Kalaa made no sound as he scouted the way for them. But even here in the lion's den, he couldn't sense anything wrong. It's strange. I sense nothing, he told Nadya.
What do you mean, nothing?
She asked back. For a moment she forgot that she was not alone with her brother.
I didn't say a thing,
Huria told her with a puzzled look. Nadya looked back to her, contemplating if she should tell her the truth. Maybe it was time.
I know. I was talking to Kalaa.
She started, unsure how to go on.
You talked to him? You mean others? Or to calm him down?
Huria watched Kalaa, who looked back at her, with a gaze that told her nothing. Are you sure you should tell her? He asked his sister, and Nadya nodded.
It's better that way,
she said to Kalaa, before talking to Huria again.
Kalaa understands our speech, and I can understand him. He can talk to me.
Huria nodded and smiled a bit.
You really love him, right? I heard from many people who had companions what you just said.
Kalaa laughed, but he tried to keep his sounds down. Nadya blushed a bit, but she kept on talking.
Yeah, that's not what I meant. Try him. I swear he can understand you. He will nod or shake his head.
Huria seemed baffled. She thought that this might be to calm her down, and so she played along.
Good. So, Kalaa, does she tell the truth?
She watched his reaction. And just like a good kitty, he tilted his head and watched puzzled. Nadya gave him a gaze that could have curdled milk. And just as Huria would get back to Nadya, he nodded. The black-haired woman's eyes fluttered.
You really understand me?
She gasped. Again the panther nodded, his tail swishing around.
This is magic!
Huria couldn't believe it.
We should still be quiet,
Nadya reminded them, just in time as two djinn came down the hallway. They dove into the next open doorway and hid. Luckily for them, the djinn walked right past them. As they were out of hearing range, Nadya looked to Kalaa.
How could you miss them?
She was baffled, but so was her brother.
I don't know.
Kalaa looked around, listened, sniffed, and then he noticed it.
This pyramid. It messes with my senses. I can't even smell you two.
Nadya's eyes opened in horror. That would set them at a disadvantage far greater than she feared, but it wouldn't stop them. She explained the newfound problem to Huria, as it was very important that they all knew. They dove deeper into the pyramid, the walls adorned with intricate carvings, depicting scenes of ancient rituals. This was definitely a religious building.
How old do you think this pyramid is?
Nadya marveled.
Hard to tell,
Kalaa answered while looking at the murals. Huria watched them talking, but she didn't mix in. That was until she found a room.
Here's where I got free, I think. Everything here looks the same.
Her brown eyes started to water.
They helped me all. I hope they're still alive.
Nadya put a hand on her shoulder.
We will find every survivor and do our best to free them.
Suddenly, Kalaa's ears twitched, and even Nadya looked the same direction.
I hear something.
His voice rumbled in Nadya's ear. But still, there was something else.
I know. I hear it also. A whisper of some sort.
Huria looked at them puzzled. To her ears, there was only silence.
What are you talking about? Can't you hear it? The whispers, I mean,
Nadya asked. The other woman shook her head.
I hear nothing. What do you mean?
The siblings listened again, looking at each other. A faint whisper rang in their ears.
We hear whispers, I would say, but I can't make out what they talk about. It draws us this way.
Nadya pointed along the hallway.
We should look there.
As silent as possible, they followed the unknown whispers, and as they snooked through the pyramid, the direction was dictated by them. After a while, even Huria seemed to hear something. It was in one of the rooms. There was movement and a cry for help. With haste, they made their way to the big door that led into the big room. What they saw next sent shivers down the spine. In the room, dozens of jinn stayed and watched some sort of stage. They all seemed to be in some sort of trance, swaying mildly from side to side. The screams of panic grew louder as two of them brought a naked man into the room from a hidden door. Nadya remembered his face but not his name, and for a moment she thought of rescuing him, but Kalaa held her back.
Don't think about it. Have you seen the jinn?
The warning in his voice was not to be ignored, and he was right. It would have been suicide to run into this room, so she just watched. Their hearts almost stopped as they saw what happened next. From the shadows of the stage, a figure emerged. First it looked like a woman, but something in the way she moved was strange and foreign. And then she came into the light. It was a woman, her ample breasts naked, swaying with the rhythm of her body. But where normal women had legs, her body changed into that of a giant serpent. She was hung with golden jewelry adorned with jewels. The only semblance of modesty was some sort of loincloth she wore over her hips. Her face looked beautiful, almost unbearably so, but from her mouth there were scars, going up almost to her ears before making a sharp turn to her neck and ended close to her shoulders. With a slithering motion, she came to the prisoner. Just now they could see how big she really was, as she towered on her snake tail, twice the height of the man. His eyes widened with panic, and he tried to break himself free from the iron grip of the jinn. Her gaze was almost hypnotic as she swayed from left to right before him. Scales accentuated the form of her human body. Even in the face she had some, giving her an exotic allure. In her left hand she held a crystal, which glowed faintly with a ghostly light. She held it high, and the jinn's alien dance grew more energetic. A thought came up in Nadya's mind. It seemed that the crystal controlled the jinn. What happened next made the women green in the face, and even Kalaa seemed uncomfortable. The horrible sight would bring even battle-hardened men to their knees. With a horrible sound, the snake woman opened her mouth, but not just like a human would. The scars Nadya saw earlier were part of her mouth and looked strange and disgusting as her neck split open and she began to put herself over the panicked man. His resistance was futile. The claws of the jinn held him with an iron grip, blood dripping from his arms, so strong he tried to escape, but to no avail. Nadya's hand came up to her mouth, trying to keep down what was in her stomach. Painfully slowly, the snake woman devoured the man. And the worst thing was that he was still alive, getting eaten by this monstrosity. Even though she wanted to look away, Nadya's eyes were glued to the gruesome display. It seemed to take an eternity, but then it was suddenly over. His contours were still visible in her giant snake body, wiggling with the last desperate tries of his cape, but his fate was set. Her mouth closed again, and she licked her mouth with her split tongue, this time only the part that looked human. Again cries were heard, as the two jinn returned to the hidden chamber and got another prisoner. This time the monster did not seem to be planning on devouring him. The new prisoner also tried to struggle, with the same results as the last one. As he stood before the creature, she held the crystal close to his face, starting to speak in a tongue neither of them understood. His struggle ended when his eyes went empty. Suddenly his body started to contort and twist. His skin started to wither, his eyes sank into their sockets, and his fingers turned to claws. All while this was happening, they could hear his bones break and form anew with gruesome sounds. This was the secret of the jinn. They were all humans once. Nadya's heart sunk. But still, in the hidden chamber, there must be more prisoners, and she had to rescue them. After his transformation was done, he stood into the row of jinn, as if he was never a human, joining their strange swaying. The snake demon slithered back into the shadows, and Nadya saw that she lay down on a bed made of pillows, her hands still grabbing the crystal. The three of them retreated to another room. Only here Huria allows herself to break down, tears running down her face, and she shivered on the whole body.
What by the gods was that?
Nadya asked no one in particular, yet Kalaa still answered, as if to order his own thoughts.
I don't know, but it was disgusting.
A cold shiver crept up the skins.
The others, they will all share that fate?
Barely a whisper escaped Huria's mouth as she asked this question. Nadya turned to her.
We will save them. I just don't know how. We can't simply storm this room.
Kalaa started to pace the room, a sure sign that he was nervous. He did not care that much about them, but he knew his sister would, and that she would rather die than leave them to their gruesome fate.
We need a plan, and a good one,
he growled, looking around the room.
Some sort of distraction,
Nadya thought along him. Huria felt a bit left out since she couldn't understand Kalaa's words, but her mind also worked. As he paced the room, his eyes catched old scrolls of parchment in a shelf at the wall.
Nadya, what about the oil lamps?
He looked up to the hidden nooks. Nadya also followed his gaze. She didn't quite reach it, and so she signaled him to help her. He leapt the distance, placing himself under the nook, and she jumped on his back. There hidden was a small oil lamp. Huria watched them in awe as they worked together so well.
Yes, there are little oil lamps, Kalaa. And?
She asked as she jumped down. He nodded to the scrolls.
Their skin looks dry like parchment. Maybe they burn just as well. Anyway,
I guess a fire is a good distraction.
Huria looked between the two of them. What does he say? And what about the oil lamps? She asked. Do you have a plan? Maybe we have. They use oil lamps, so they must have a stockpile somewhere. If we find that, we could use the oil to light a fire, maybe burn a few of the gin.
She clenched her teeth. It would mean to burn all those people. But then again, maybe it would be a mercy for them. Huria nodded. It was worth a try, if they managed to find it. Nadya also took a few of the scrolls and put them in her bag. Maybe they would prove useful. Then they hastily started to search for the storeroom, where they would hopefully find enough oil to make a big fire. And also they had to make haste because they didn't know how long it would take till the jinn roamed the hallways again. As they walked from room to room, they encountered a few jinns, so it was clear that not all of them were in the ceremonial room. They thought about attacking them, but decided against it, the risk too great that the others would notice. And just as they were ready to give up, they finally found the storeroom. It was full to the brim with different wares from who knows how much caravans. And Nadya suddenly realized why they called it the Devil's Track, and why the caravans stopped following it. Some of the things here looked old and broken, but some are fairly new. So Amir was not the only merchant mad enough to try the luck. I think we are right here. Let's look for the lamp oil, Nadya said as she already dived into the piles. Huria followed her, frantically searching for the oil they needed, and anything else useful. Kalaa stood at the door, guarding it. After what felt like an eternity, they found 2 large jugs of oil. But without the sun, they didn't know how long they searched. Was the snake woman still asleep? Were the jinns still captured in their strange ritual? All those questions lingered, but they did have a plan, and that was better than nothing. With a rope they secured the 2 jugs to Kalaa's back, and made a hasty return to the ceremonial room. Luck was on their side. They all still stood there, docile, swaying to a music only they could hear. Let's hope we are still in the gods' favor, Nadya whispered as they tried to be as quiet as possible. Huria looked nervous and she sweated. She was no warrior, but she was thrown into this fight. Kalaa subtly nodded in Huria's direction, bringing Nadya's attention to her. In an attempt to calm her friend down, the young woman lay her head on her shoulder. Stay behind us. Leave the fight to Kalaa and me. We will manage. A small smile formed on Nadya's lips, and Huria nodded, taking a deep breath to calm herself down. Nadya silently opened the jar and shoved it into the door. The room sloped slightly, which would make it easier. The 2 women tipped the jug over, slowly letting the oil spill, and they prayed. But actually, it worked pretty good. None of the jinn reacted to the oil. They still stood in their stupor. With the 2nd jar, it was the same. The oil flowed lazily down the slight slope. Sadly, it didn't spread as much as they had hoped, but it still splits the room in half. The only thing that was missing was the spark to ignite everything. And suddenly, all did go way too fast. In a fit of panic, Huria ran past both of them before they could react. She dashed to a brazier standing close to the entrance and pushed it to the oil. Kalaa and Nadya reacted without thinking. They ran after the women, Nadya grabbing her spear. Chaos ensued as the hot coals landed into the oil. For the first moment nothing happened, except the jinn noticing the commotion. Hellish shrieks and screams shattered the relative silence as they stormed at the 3 intruders. Time seemed to slow down as the snake woman appeared from the shadows, her mouth wide open in her unnatural appearance. She still held the crystal, but in her hand was now also a great sword. Just as she was about to slither from the little stage, the oil started to light up. The jinn that had almost reached the group were catched in the flames and lit up like tinder. Kalaa was right. Instead of rage, the shrieks now were closer to pain and panic. And the fire kept the snake woman back, cause most of the oil pooled in front of it. Her tail thrashed through the air in anger. Only a few jinn came through to them, and Nadya and Kalaa started to defend themselves. Huria held her weapon up, but the siblings guard her as best as they can, so she didn't have to fight. Their plan worked good, but the attackers were plenty, and worse, they had someone who told them how to move, how to evade the fire, and where to attack. They quite literally had to cut off the snake's head, and fast before the fire burned out fully. "We have to kill her," Nadya said, her breath wrecked from the exertion. The fire had heated up the room, and sweat ran from her brows. As his claws shredded through the jinns, Kalaa answered, "Much easier said than done." They both fought for their lives, fire giving them the advantage, but they will still be cornered if it goes out. And then it dims down. The snake woman leaves her fiery cage. With her in the fray, they could be cornered, and that would mean the end for them. Nadya charged, and Kalaa followed. "Stay down, Huria!" she shouted, hoping that they could keep the jinn's attention to themselves. "Who are you?" The voice of the slithering monster sounded strange, raspy yet still somewhat alluring at the same time. "Your end," Nadya answered as she tried to pierce the heart of the monstrosity. Now the real fight was about to begin. This woman was no thoughtless beast like the jinn. She was a calculating demon. Kalaa tried his best to keep the others at bay, getting Nadya the space she needed to fight. The snake woman screamed in anger. This time her mouth opened up wider, and the memory of her eating the prisoner flared up in Nadya's mind. She jumped back to evade the tail whipping at her, and managed just in time to raise her spear to deflect the enemy's sword. Nadya wished her brother could help her, but he had his own fight, ripping and tearing through the jinn. At least now they couldn't retreat into the sand, but they still seemed endless. Their claws still tried to slash them. Huria keeps cowering in fear in the corner. Luck has it that she gets mostly ignored. If a jinn notices her, Kalaa jumps to her aid. It is a race against the time. He has to finish the jinn and help Nadya, fearing that the snake woman might be too much for her. "Many stood against me and they never survived," the strange creature hissed as she swayed her gigantic body around with a dexterity that was otherworldly. Time and time again she deflected and evaded Nadya's thrusts. "There's a first time for everything," another thrust deflected. Nadya was in the defense as the snake women slithered around her, trying to separate her and Kalaa. She covered her moves with jinns and pressed her assault on Nadya. The fight started to wear the young women out, but the snake woman used the jinn to get herself a little rest. Just now Nadya noticed that she bleeded from small injuries, but the adrenaline of the fight kept her up. With a quick gaze she looked to Kalaa, now in the back of her adversary and surrounded by jinn. He also looked wrecked, parts of his fur singed from the fire that still glimmers around them, curds of blood hanging in his pelt, but he also kept up. Though it was a grave mistake to look out for her brother, the snake woman's tail coiled itself around her body. "You should not have come here, little girl," the snake woman mocked her as she lifted her up from the ground like a doll. Her scales cut into Nadya's skin. Full of pain, Nadya's breath falters. She tried hard to not let her spear slip from her grasp. Her emerald eyes come in line with the slit pupils of her enemy. "You will die," the snake woman hisses, her mouth opening wide, unnaturally. Her sword cuts through the air, aiming for Nadya's throat, but in the last second Nadya deflected it. She concentrated, remembered her training. Short moves, calm breathing, save your strength. A strange laugh fills the room. "The rat wants to fight the snake. I have no haste to kill you, rat." The snake woman tightens the grip of her tail, pressing more air out of Nadya's lungs. The red-haired woman cried in pain. "Nadya!" Kalaa screamed in rage, trying to free himself from the jinn who surrounded him. His sister needed him. Nadya let herself slump. It is a ruse in a hope to lure her enemy into a false sense of security. Huria shivered as she saw all this. She still cowers in the corner, and the enemy seemed to ignore her. Either the snake woman did not see her as a threat, or she had overseen her. Huria's mind raced. How could she help her friends? What could she do? The slave woman was not stupid enough to think that her weapon could help. She did not know to wield it without cutting herself. But what about the guards still being held prisoner? Though her body shakes, she tried her luck. Step by step she sneaked down to the hidden chamber, where the prisoners must be. All the while the fight around her goes on. Kalaa tried to get back to the snake woman to free his sister. Nadya tried to defend herself. She trusted her spear, but with her lungs slowly crushed, it's too slow, and her enemy easily deflects them. But she still tries a few attacks. She must get free. Slowly, and with sadistic joy, Nadya gets crushed by the snake woman. But then she had an idea. She feigned an attack on the enemy's chest. In the last moment she pierced the hand that held the crystal. Julia stopped in her track. This could be the turning of the tide in this fight. The crystal flies for a moment, and the snake woman hisses, her mouth gaping wide, as the grip of the tail softens for just a moment, giving Nadya the chance to take a deep breath, regaining a bit of her power. Kalaa also sees his chance, as the Jinn are for a moment not the coordinated swarm that attacks him. He slashes away, and with a mighty jump he attacks the demon, biting and clawing her tail. Nadya thrusts her spear to disarm her opponent, but also in this moment, the tail loosens his grip fully. He fell to the ground and landed on her back, once again getting the air pushed out of her lungs. Kalaa had to release his grip as the snake woman slashed at him with her sword, trying to free herself. Like a whip, her tail crashes into Kalaa's side, throwing its massive body away like it is a mere toy.
Kalaa!
Nadya screamed as he hit the wall and stayed down for a moment.
The crystal!
Huria screamed, bringing the attention to her. For a moment it seemed like the snake woman will attack her. But then she saw that Nadya had pushed herself up, running to the crystal.
Watch out!
Huria screamed, and Nadya turned at the last second to deflect the sword. Instead of her neck, it slices through parts of her vest, revealing the breast underneath, with rivulets of blood flowing along the curve. A race between the two started, as the snake woman tried to reach the crystal before Nadya could. With a thundering roar, Kalaa came back into the battle, ignoring the Jinn like Nadya did, only defending against the most critical strikes against him. He threw himself against the snake woman again, trying to slow her down. And just as she tried to pierce Kalaa, Nadya thrusts her spear for one last time, piercing the breast of the snake woman. The demon looks down to her chest, her eyes widened in disbelief. That girl, barely a woman, killed her. Her snake tail thrashes a few more times, but there is no more force behind it, and the Jinn slowly turn to sand. They have won, at least this time. Exhaustion took both of them over, and they sunk to the ground. Huria threw away her sword and sprinted to Nadya's side, looking for signs of life. Nadya's eyes were half open, her body littered with small cuts, and a bigger one over her exposed breast, and every breath seemed to hurt her, but she will live.
Kalaa, is he?
Nadya whispered, and Huria looked to the big cat, lying on the ground like a stack of pelt. She scurried over. He looks battered, but he also breathes. His fur is singed here and there. Blood taints his black fur, but he is alive.
He lives. You both live.
Huria can't keep her tears back. They survived the snake demon's lair. Nadya tries to sit up, holding her side. She does not care that anyone can see her breast. She has more pressing concerns. The crystal lies a few meters away, pulsing with a strange light. It is as if it whispers to Nadya. Kalaa pushed himself up. He limped as he walked.
You hear it too, right?
He asked with rattling breath. Nadya nodded. The fight was over, but the battle was not. She tried to stand up, and Huria came to her to support her. With her help, she reached the crystal.
The crystal whispers,
she told Huria, who did hear nothing.
What does it say?
Huria asked in awe and fear.
I can't make out the words. Kalaa?
She looked to the big panther, but he shook his head.
It's the same as you, but I dislike it. The hair in my neck stands up the closer I got.
His tail told of his nervousness. For a moment Nadya felt tempted. Though she couldn't make out the words, there was a feeling of power that gushed from the crystal. Nadya leaned on Huria as she lifted her spear high above her head. And then she smashed it down on the crystal, bursting it in a million pieces. And the whispers finally go silent. I think we won. Nadya smiled to both of them. Let's hope we can free the others. They passed by the snake woman's body again. Blood was slowly seeping out of the hole in her chest when Nadya's spear had pierced her. Nadya thought about it. Are Kalaa and her like the snake demon? Or was she once human, corrupted by the crystal? Maybe she would find answers if they could find their father. Huria, keep it to yourself that Kalaa can understand us, please, Nadya told her, and Huria nodded. It is better that way, I understand. They found the doorway to the prison. Only a handful of people had survived, but every life counted. Nadya talked to the guard, telling them that Kadir was dead. They nodded in silence. He was a stern commander, but a fair one. Then she asked them if they would agree to free the slaves. As compensation, she promised them that they could take whatever they could carry from the storeroom and what was left of Amir's caravan. They all agreed, and Nadya freed everyone, slave and soldier alike. All of them returned to the oasis. They reached it at night and took camp. Luckily, most of the pack animals had decided to stay close to the water, so they will have it easier if they leave the desert. After they buried the dead, they made a little feast out of the provisions and celebrated their freedom. Nadya and Kalaa retreated early into the shadows of a palm tree of the oasis. Nadya undressed while Kalaa lied down in a patch of soft vegetation. The moon shone bright as Nadya entered the water of the oasis. She softly washed away the grime of the fight, and then she let herself drift a bit. Her hair swayed with the waves as she watched the stars above. This was the hardest fight they had in their travel, but it would surely not be the last one, and she wondered what lied before them on their perilous journey to the north. She swam back to the edge of the water and sat down, her hips still in it. Do you think we will have more such fights, Kalaa? She asked without looking at him.
Thousands. The world is wide, and this could hardly be the only monster.
He pondered. Was she the same as we are? A sudden sadness filled her voice.
Maybe. But we are different. We did not succumb to the whispers, so we are better. And we survived, so we are stronger.
That was his standpoint, and most likely he was right. They both looked up as they noticed Huria coming to them. Does my presence disturb you? She asked quietly, and Nadya shook her head. No, why should you? We are comrades. Want to join me? Huria nodded and started to undress. The bronze skin of the woman seemed to glisten in the moonlight. Her breasts were bigger than Nadya's, but not by much. And she sat down beside the red-haired woman. Her warmth radiated to Nadya. That was how close she was sitting by her. They talked a bit about what they have lived through, and then Huria asked about her future. What is it you seek in the north? Nadya took a deep breath. She thought about the reasons for her travel, her mother's legacy, her father's mystery, and not at least a thirst for adventure. I seek answers, she said finally. The heritage of my mother, and maybe a clue about my father. Huria leaned against Nadya, much to her surprise. We all want to know where we come from, Huria said dreamy, and we all want to know our destiny. Her arms slowly started to caress Nadya's back. The warmth of the bronze-skinned woman sent a shiver down Nadya's spine. her scent warm and soothing. She moved to look Huria in the eyes. Around them the air grew thick with something unspoken as she gazed into the deep brown eyes. Huria looked at her, a deep look with so much unspoken feelings.
Huria,
Nadya began, her voice soft.
I appreciate your offer, but you don't owe me anything.
Huria leaned in closer, her breasts brushing the white-skinned arm of Nadya.
It's not a debt,
she whispered, a bit embarrassed.
I want this.
Nadya's heart skipped a beat. She knew the desire Huria spoke about, in the heat of the battle and in the quiet moments of respite. A longing to do something right now because every fiber in your body aches for it. But she was also well aware of the power dynamics at play. All too easy someone gives themselves to a rescuer. It's something Nadya didn't want to exploit.
I don't want you to feel like you have to,
Nadya said firmly, even though she felt attraction to the woman beside her. And for a moment, Huria's eyes searched Nadya's, looking for any sign of doubt or hesitation.
I know what I want,
she said, her voice unusual demanding. They looked into each other's eyes, and the moment stretched to eternity. And then Nadya leaned in, pressing her lips gently on Huria's. With every passing second, the kiss grew more passionate, their bodies moving closer to each other. For a moment, they could forget all the horrors they lived through this day. Hands started to roam, exploring, claiming. The night air seemed to raise in temperature. Skin touched more skin as they pressed against each other, and their kisses started to get needy. Huria's hand found her way between Nadya's thighs, bringing her to gasp into her mouth. The red-haired woman mirrored the motions, her hand getting bolder in her explorations. It was a moment of pure, unbridled passion, a celebration of life. Nadya felt the tension in Huria's body, the tightening of muscles and the tremble in her voice as she whispered Nadya's name. Around them they other noticed and retreated to the outer edges of the oasis, giving the two women more privacy. Nobody wanted to disturb their savior. They had seen what a demon Nadya had slain. Mind you, it was not that they did not have interest, but their respect was bigger, and some even feared Nadya. Only Kalaa was close, a few meters away, as he rested and licked his wound and burns. He did not concern himself with the intimate affair of humans. Nadya was his own blood, a bond that transcended sexual attraction. And Huria was as attractive to him as a stone. He did not understand what makes a human beautiful. For him, one looked like the other. Their coupling was a symphony of sighs and gasps, moans and soft whispers. The water rippled around their bodies with each movement. Nadya felt a deep sense of connection with Huria. It was a bond of shared pain and victory, of trust and vulnerability. As the climax washed over both of them, the night air seemed to shiver around them. Together they lay side by side and watched the stars over them. With their passion spent, they talked about the next part of the journey, when they would leave the desert and all of the slaves would be truly free. After a while they dressed themselves again and rejoined the group. For the rest of the journey, Nadya and Huria shared the tent that was once Amir's. They spent the nights together, their bodies entangled. It was not love, it was something more primal, a bond forged in the crucible of danger and survival. The other warriors treated Nadya as their equal now, sharing stories of battles and faraway lands they had seen. Her mind raced with the possibilities that lay ahead. Nobody cared about the relationship the two women had, though it was strange in their land, seeing it lived so open. But most saw it as a warrior claiming its prize. Little did they know that Nadya was given a gift. The days flowed into each other, and after a long journey, full of tales and camaraderie, they finally reached the desert's end. Vegetation showed up more, and at a faraway horizon the silhouette of a city grew. As they reached the gates, they said their goodbyes, and Nadya's pulse raced with the anticipation of new adventures. She wished Huria and the rest the best of luck, before she followed the road with Kalaa, both of them eager to find their destination. But this is another story.